I noticed that. the other day. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, welcome everybody to the October 8th Consolidated Land Use Board meeting. We will begin with roll call. Frank,
Here.
John,
Here.
Bailey.
Here.
Forrest.
In attendance via Zoom.
Thanks, Forrest. Becky Moores is not present this evening. Quentin
Present.
is present and Jesse is here. Okay, great. We have to move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the September 17th, 2025 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve the September 17, 2025 minutes.
Great. Motion by Bailey, second by Frank. Any discussion?
They looked beautiful.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
We need Forrest to.
Oh, Forrest, did you vote on that?
I didn't, but
He wasn't, you're right. Never mind, I'm sorry, Forrest, you weren't at the meeting, so I take it back, you don't need to vote on that, so we've got 4.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, we are going to move into general public comment. So for anyone online or anyone in the room, this is for an item that is not on the current agenda. It is also a comment that the Livingston Consolidated Land Use Board has jurisdiction over. So if you do have a general public comment and you'd like to come up to the podium, name and address, please. You can make your comment.
Jessica,
You've got to come up and make a.
are the bulb outs on the agenda?
Yeah,
They are.
Okay,
Yeah,
You gotta
come on.
stand in,
yes,
Linda, thanks.
I wasn't sure what was on the agenda.
Oh,
Lindy
good.
Gibson, 304 South Second.
Thanks, Lindy.
Hope I'm at the right meeting. I feel I am. I'd like to comment on the proposed bulb outs downtown. When I was growing up, Livingston was a railroad community that saw an influx of population in the summer months because we were on Highway 89 and 90. We were an intersection between two major highways in Montana. And the influx of our population took place in the summer because people were going from Yellowstone to Glacier, Glacier to Yellowstone. That's where our population influx was. Well, fast forward, now I'm 72, Livingston is a destination. They are a destination. I'm very outspoken. I visit with strangers all the time. The things they love about Livingston is our friendliness and how simple our life is. And if you watch anytime, night or day, and I just live on Clark and Second, which is just down from the business district, which is 3 blocks long. From Park to Clark is 3 blocks, and then from Main to Second is 2 blocks. That's all the bigger our downtown is. And people love to walk around downtown. They love to come to Livingston and relax, not only because of the beauty of the area and the natural resources. And I think fly fishing is our #1 industry now. Siamese twin to tourism. I would like Livingston to stay simple and keep its charm. And that's really important. People love to just walk around and not have anything complex going on. You know, like it's not, the heart of Livingston is just a little heart, and to keep it simple. I just would really like to not lose the landscape of who we are and who we've been for generations, where everybody knows everybody and their dog. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindy. Any other general public comment?
I just have a question for clarification. Jeanette, like with Montana Freshwater Partners, will there be an opportunity to comment on the zoning portion during that segment of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other general public comment?
Patricia Grabo, 204 East Calendar Street. I want to also comment on ball box for just a moment, please. I have a building downtown that covers a block, half a block one way and a quarter of a block the other way. And I was involved in 3 different plannings, starting with the Entrenco study of 2000 and 3 different plans for downtown Livingston. In each of those plans, we kind of had a fight about ball bouts, and the people who were against ball bouts won. The biggest one of all was 2012, when we who have businesses downtown looked at our sidewalks and looked at our streets and realized that they were crumbling. You could hardly come out of Home Outfitters without falling. So we made the sacrifice in 2012 to put in new sidewalks and to pay for the roads. Clint Tinsley was against that, so he did just the demonstration ball bouts at the library. That's the only reason they were done, because he thought, well, if people love those ball bouts, they'll change their mind. We did not. So the Grabo itself, our half of the sidewalks we felt was a sacrifice was $50,000 for just our half of the sidewalks. Now, we're a little business, and we ended up having to sell one of our units at the Grabo in order to meet our obligation and make our sidewalks what they should be. Those corner bulb streets were designed so they could not take bulb outs. We knew that was part of the design of those corners. Fast forward now to the possibility of anything more. Those sidewalks are really good. The corners are wonderful. We're happy. We're down 20% this year. Most of downtown Livingston is down 20%, and the city is not putting any effort into enhancing our economy so that our average income is higher. So we're down 20%. Now, if someone gets an idea that now, after we put that huge investment in every single business invested, if they will get the idea that somehow they love ball bots and we just didn't know what we were doing, they forget that we don't have the money. We do not have the money to put another $50,000 into our half the sidewalks. It's not fair. And if you want our downtown to really suffer, if you want our economy to go just to pot, give it some consideration, but other than that, don't consider it. We've made that decision 4 times, well, 5 times, and I have the paper here that was proposed, a one-way street, and ball bouts were also proposed when Mike Cardos wanted to do a one-way street. Our downtown building owners went door to door to every business and they asked them, do you want ball bouts? Do you want a one-way street? And they said 80% of the businesses said absolutely not. So I don't know why they're even being considered. We don't have the money. You want to destroy our economy? Fine. Think about it, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. I'll just mention, I know we don't have the agenda up, but the 2 items that are on the agenda this evening are the Park County Housing Coalition has a planned scheduled comment presentation. That's first. The second one is the zoning code and the consideration of the proposed zoning code update. So those are the 2 items on the agenda tonight. So general public comment is anything that is not one of those 2 things. I'm sorry if you could, oh, here it is up on the board. Thank you for your comment, Patricia, and thanks for mentioning that there is an existing bulb out of a completed and designed bulb out on the corner of Calendar and Third, where the library is. Okay, any other general public comment? Anybody online have a general public comment? Going once? So we're looking clear over there. If you do, you can raise your hand or come off mute. Last call for general public comment. Okay, hearing none, we're gonna close general public comment and we'll move on to agenda item 4A. The Park County Housing Coalition has a presentation for us this evening. I think Catherine Daly is online.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
You can, yes, thank you.
Catherine, do you want to run the PowerPoint, or do you want me to cycle through it?
If
I'm gonna give the
you,
option.
if you wouldn't mind, that would be easier, because then I can keep up with my notes on this end.
One second to pull it up. I apologize. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
And I'm sorry I can't be with all of you in person this evening. It is my husband and I's wedding anniversary on Friday, so we are trying to get out of town to celebrate. So thanks for accommodating me giving this presentation virtually today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations. Let me figure out how to share this. Okay. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Yeah. So. Still seeing it?
Yep.
Okay, you can just say next, and I think that's it. Yep.
Perfect. That looks great. Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody, land use board members. Thank you so much for making time to talk a little bit about the Park County Housing Coalition's work this year. I really appreciate it, especially during a busy time for all of you. My name is Catherine Daly. I'm the Park County Housing Coalition Program Manager with HRDC here in Livingston. Next slide, please. Yes, that's perfect. Before we begin, I just want to thank the financial supporters who have contributed to the coalition's work since I started my job in September of 2023. Notably among these is the City of Livingston, whose commission has continued to vote to appropriate some money to support my position and the work that we're doing in the community. I would not be here without the city support and the support of our other financial supporters. So thank you very much. Next slide, please. I'll be covering 3 topics this evening. First, just some general information about the coalition and what we got up to last year and our accomplishments. Then I will touch on what's happening in Park County's housing market. And finally, we'll review what we've been focusing on this year as part of our work plan. Next slide, please. So the coalition is a program stewarded by HRDC's Community Development Department since 2020 and supported by a host of really wonderful local, state, and national partners who are highlighted throughout today's presentation. These include, but certainly are not limited to, our financial supporters. Our mission is simply to increase opportunities for Park County residents to access housing where we can afford to live and thrive. We're community-led. I'm a full-time paid staff member who's supported by a wonderful 9-person volunteer steering committee comprised of Park County residents. Planning Director Severson is one of those, and we have been delighted to have her on the steering committee this year. Our work is guided by the 2022 Housing Action Plan, or HAP, which was adopted into the Park County and City of Livingston's growth policies. I'll be talking about the HAP more shortly. Next slide, please. But before that, I want to highlight how we work, which is strategically implementing HAP tools in a manner that serves people with different housing needs throughout our community and addresses different parts of our housing market. On this slide, there are two guides that we use to help us meet this goal. The one that's kind of house-shaped and light blue on the left-hand side of your slide is a housing policy framework called an organization called Local Housing Solutions. It identifies 4 categories of action that should be addressed to have a comprehensive, balanced, and equitable housing strategy. The other is the housing ladder, which you might have heard of. That describes the spectrum of housing types people are likely to access in our community. They can move up and down the ladder depending upon, the circumstances of their life or their needs at the time. When someone is experiencing homelessness, they've fallen off the housing ladder, and therefore the first rung is emergency shelter. They could climb up from there all the way to high-end home ownership market. But ideally, we would have mobility in our housing market so people could climb up and down the housing ladder according to their needs. Next slide, please. We also work opportunistically, and what I mean by that is we prioritize housing action plan tools for implementation that leverage national, state, and local law and policy changes. We did that last year with our work on accessory dwelling units. On the screen are the Federal Housing Administration's 2023 October policy that created a new way for folks to get loans for accessory dwelling units, and Montana Senate Bill 528, which you're familiar with, that was signed into law after not this past legislative session, but the previous legislative session, and cleared some regulatory barriers to ADU creation. We also prioritize tools that align with and build upon ideas, expertise, and values of our partners. The photos on this slide are of us partnering with LiveWell 49 to provide a free lunch and learn at Livingston Healthcare about how housing impacts health outcomes. I have a really cool paper on that if you're interested. The other image is of our volunteer panelists for a free accessory dwelling unit financing seminar that we held last spring. Next slide, please. So we were working on implementing some of the tools from the Housing Action Plan last year. What did we accomplish? Well, our areas of focus were accessory dwelling units, employer-assisted housing partnerships, so like workforce housing, and zoning reform, which was, of course, driven by the City of Livingston. I won't get into great detail about these things now in the interest of time, but I would be happy to talk more about any of this work if you have questions after the presentation. I just want to highlight one pleasant surprise from our work on employer-assisted housing partnerships is the high level of interest from schools throughout Park County to address the housing needs of their teachers and staff and other community members. I also just want to add that all of the resources we created for our ADU programming are available online for free at parkcountyhousing.com under resources. We have videos, budgeting and forecasting tools, helpful guides from AARP for improving the safety and accessibility of your home, and a really helpful guide on wildfire safety from Headwaters Economics. So if that's of interest, please check it out. Next slide, please. One other thing I want to highlight about our work is that we strive for meaningful engagement that is tailored to the interests, needs, and strengths of people in the community who want to learn about and work to address our housing needs. Not everyone has to be a part of the community's housing solutions, but there's room for anyone who's interested. We want to find the puzzle pieces where folks who want to can play a meaningful role. This has actually been one of the most rewarding parts of our work to date, and I look forward to connecting with more people as we implement new Housing Action Plan tools. I want to take this moment again to shout out Planning Director Severson, who's pictured in the photo on the bottom, preparing to speak to our ADU workshop participants about permitting for accessory dwelling units in the city. She has, as I mentioned, been serving on the steering committee on behalf of the City of Livingston and always asks really thoughtful questions and is thinking about how we can support the most vulnerable members of our community. Lastly, before we move on, I want to highlight here that with additional grants and financial gifts, we were able to close the gap in my position. So I'm fully funded through 2026 and have been able to focus entirely on the actual work, not fundraising to do the work. So that was a really nice milestone to hit earlier this year. Next slide, please. So what's going on in our housing market? If you saw this presentation last year, you'll see more of the same. We're seeing a lack of mobility in which people are either locked out of housing in the community, so they can't move here to take a job and buy a home, or they're locked into homes that might not be meeting their needs. Either they have a growing family and their house is too small, or their house is not ADA accessible and is too big for them, or something else in between. Same as last year, roughly 30% of Park County households rent, 70% own. I've included average household size, median household income, and max affordable housing payment for renters and owners respectively on the screen. It's just important to note that there are differences there. Generally, we're seeing prices for rental and ownership homes that are out of reach for many residents in both categories. But what does it mean for a home to be out of reach? What does it mean for a home to be affordable? A rule of thumb is that when a household spends more than 30% of its income on housing, it's no longer considered affordable. Instead, that household is considered cost burdened. You might have also heard the term house poor if somebody owns their home. This rule of thumb is supported by a 2021 study titled Inflection Points in Community Level Homeless Rates, which found that, quote, the expected homeless rate in a community begins to quickly increase once median rental costs exceed 30% of median income. We'll talk a little bit more about what we're seeing in terms of folks experiencing homelessness in our community later in this presentation. I want to add also that median household incomes for both renters and owners can mask the fact that many of our community members are making do with a lot less. So roughly a third of Park County households are living on $50,000 or less annually, and more than 1,000 households, almost equally split between renters and homeowners, are estimated to earn less than $20,000 annually. Next slide, please. So a little bit more detail on why homeownership and rental housing is out of reach for folks who need it in our community. One thing is that in August of this year, the median single-family home sales price was $679,900. That is a 74% increase from August of 2020, 5 years ago, or approximately 15% growth annually. We know our wages are not growing that much and keeping pace with this rising cost of home ownership. Interest rates have decreased since last year, but still remain elevated. I checked in with Becky Miller at Opportunity Bank, who also serves on our steering committee. A little less than a month ago, she said that a buyer with great credit and 20% down, which is nearly $136,000 if you're paying the median price for a single family home in Park County in August. With all of that, you can get a 6.125% interest rate for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. The rate for this exceptional buyer back in March, when I checked with her, was 6.25. So there has been modest softening of rates, but not anything dramatic. Things are hard for renters too. Back in March, I scraped some rental data from active listings and found that the estimated median rent is nearly $400 more per month than the maximum the median renting household can afford. Fortunately, there are some glimmers on the horizon, and one of them is Sheep Mountain Residences, which is that low-income housing tax project that would bring 48 below-market rental homes to about a half mile of the Wellness Center. You all remember hearing about that earlier this summer. The Montana Board of Housing has yet to decide whether to allocate tax credits to this project. They will make that decision in about 2 weeks. So please cross your fingers and call someone at the Board of Housing if you know them and have something that you want to share about this project. Next slide, please. So what are we going to do to address our frozen market this year? Because we focused on tools that targeted homeowners with the financial resources to build a new home, so like an ADU, we focused on workers, and we focused on an effort that could arguably affect outcomes up and down the housing ladder through zoning reform. We thought we should turn attention to different rungs on our housing ladder this year. So we're now focusing on Tool 10, Rehabilitation Loans and Grants, Tool 12, the Coordinated Entry System. As I mentioned, we got this kind of bonus tool of the Low Income Housing Tax Credit. When I created the work plan, I wasn't sure whether this project would be moving forward, so we didn't include it. But that was a fun and pleasant surprise. And we have picked up a project that was started by a coalition subcommittee back in 2022 and 2023, and begun to really flesh it out, which is a community housing fund. So next slide, please. So I'll start by talking about the Park County Home Repair Program, and that is an example of Tool 10, Housing Rehabilitation Loans and Grants. I am thrilled that we get to partner with Park County on this much needed program. So what is it? It is a program to preserve the homes of low and moderate income Park County homeowners by using funding, excuse me, that HRDC, received as a grant to address health and safety issues of the home. So a roof repair or replacement, mold, that kind of thing, damaged windows. The money can also be used to address ADA accessibility improvements and weatherize homes and increase their energy efficiency. Next slide, please. So how does this work? We received roughly $600,000 in funding from the state's Community Development Block Grant Housing Stabilization Program, which is a mouthful, which is why we're calling it the Park County Home Repair Program. We are required to deliver this money as 0% interest, fully forgivable loans, which is a little complex, but there is a method to the state and federal government's requirements for that. Basically, the homeowners sign a deed restriction for the loan term, ensuring that the home remains affordable and inhabited by the income qualified homeowners for a period required by the state and the federal government. To be eligible, you have to own and occupy your home. This program is geared toward homes that are single family detached. If you don't have a site-built home, we can't work on your home under this particular program. Your home, of course, has to be in Park County, and the household income is either at or below 80% of Park County's area median income, which is currently $64,400 for a household of 2. There are more than, I estimate there are more than 1,600 homeowners in Park County who would be eligible for this program based on income. And based on what we know about our housing stock, I bet there are, from that standpoint, a lot more homes that could benefit from this program. So next slide, please. So why is this program needed? More than a quarter of Park County homeowners earn less than $50,000 annually. More than half of Park County homes were built before 1980. And more than 3/4 of Park County's housing stock is comprised of single family detached homes. We even have 22% of homes that were built in 1939 or earlier. So nearly a quarter of our housing stock is at least like 86 years old. And based on the age of these homes, many of these homes we know require significant repair, and many of these homes are not ADA accessible and could benefit from accessibility retrofits. I'm sure everybody in this room probably has a Livingston old house story they could tell. Next slide, please. So one of the other tools from the Housing Action Plan that we're implementing is related to our existing coordinated entry system. That work is designed to strengthen our community's existing method of assessing, prioritizing, and referring people experiencing a housing crisis so they can exit homelessness as rapidly as possible, equipped with complementary services they might need to be able to remain housed. Currently, my colleague Katie Williams, who is Livingston's case manager at HRDC, leads this system, but it wouldn't exist without a bunch of really fabulous local partners, including Aspen, One Health, L'Esprit, and the Park County Drop-In Center. I'm excited to report that as part of this work, we're exploring participation by Livingston Healthcare, so we're seeing if that is possible. But what's important about this system is that it's a framework that helps local service providers collaborate better so that they can ensure that the highest need, most vulnerable households in the community are prioritized for housing and services. With any entity where there's been staff turnover, sometimes it helps to get back to basics. So we've been working this year to clarify each partner's roles and responsibilities, update organizing documents to allow the partners to share information about their customers, clients, and patients who have chosen to enroll in the coordinated entry system. And as I mentioned, we're exploring participation by other critical partners like Livingston Healthcare. Next slide, please. So this program is structured around 4 activities shown on the image in this slide. First is access. So different partners who are part of the coordinated entry system play different roles in terms of providing access to coordinated entry in the community. Once somebody decides to enroll in coordinated entry, then they go through a standardized assessment that everybody in the community uses as part of this system. They are then prioritized by the partners based on their vulnerabilities, and then they are referred to housing and complementary services. All right, next slide, please. Why is this program needed? Well, nationwide, homelessness increased by 18% in 2024. In Park County, 21 people were identified as experiencing homelessness during the 2025 point in time count, which is nearly double the 11 identified in 2022. Through this work, we've also learned that there's a significant number of students who attend school, public school in Park County, who would be considered as experiencing homelessness under the McKinney-Vento Act. So because of this work, we're recognizing a need that isn't identified through the point in time count. We're also doing this work because we heard from service providers in Park County that this would be helpful to them when we conducted an assessment of their views on how to make service provision more efficient and effective and better address the needs of folks experiencing homelessness in our community. And it's called out in the Housing Action Plan, which specifically identifies participation by Livingston Healthcare as a gap in the community's implementation of our coordinated entry system. And so that is part of the reason why we're prioritizing efforts to work with Livingston Healthcare on whether they can participate. They've been wonderful to work with, I will add, and Hannah Willogo, who's also on our steering committee, has been instrumental in creating that line of communication with Livingston Healthcare. We know it's part of their community health improvement plan as well. So there's mutual interest in figuring out how this might work. Next slide, please. So what is this other category that I mentioned where the coalition is working on a housing fund? That is actually related, in my mind, to the future of the coalition, which I view as this 3-year experiment that we're running on behalf of the community. Basically, we're trying to figure out what we can get done before the end of 2026 when my funding runs out, and asking whether there will still be a need for this program or something different at that point. This, of course, is dependent upon having money to pay staff and money to deploy out into the community so folks can access and remain in healthy, dignified homes. I guess I should have put a question mark on that rightmost icon on the screen where it reads "continue the work," because we're still figuring out what that would look like. Next slide, please. But a big part of that process is identifying appropriate and viable revenue sources for a community housing fund. Sorry, the light in my room that I'm in is like looking so dramatic right now. I'm not sure what's going on. I will address the Phantom of the Opera appearance a little later, but just give me a chance to get through the remainder of the slides. But what we've been working on this year is exploring funding mechanisms that we think will be embraced by the community and raise a reasonable amount of money for us to address the community housing needs that aren't covered by things like state and federal grants or local funding sources. So we have taken time this year to assess 6 different models of raising funds and narrowed down on 3 that we think are most likely to be successful in the community. One is philanthropic gifts and grants. Another is impact investing, in which local investors can form a co-op and invest in real estate. And then a third is a voluntary fee program. This one we're very excited about, and we've been doing outreach to local businesses to get a sense of whether they are interested in learning more about this program. Voluntary fee programs, you might be familiar with them if you've ever traveled to Whitefish and learned about the 1% for Whitefish or community support fund they have up there. It is an opt-in additional fee that's added to receipts for different types of activities up there. And that money goes to support a variety of different things in the community, including but not limited to housing. We have a great example of a voluntary fee program in Park County that is operated by Yellowstone National Park Lodges. Their guest donation program is another sort of opt-in opportunity for their patrons who decide to contribute a dollar amount, which then goes to support the work that Yellowstone Forever does in Yellowstone National Park. So far, we've been floating this idea to local businesses, and the response has been positive. And we hope to get more feedback later on this fall. Next slide, please. So once we get a clear handle on whether something like a voluntary fee program is possible in Park County, and whether that would be a suitable complement to raising money via philanthropic gifts and grants and potentially having some kind of investment co-op, we will pick up on the work of a 2022-2023 coalition subcommittee that started developing the framework for a Park County housing fund. Obviously, things have changed since 2023 when they put this together. For one, there's now this financing pathway for accessory dwelling units that didn't exist then. That FHA, Federal Housing Administration policy I mentioned, was adopted since then. So we'll have to evaluate whether accessory dwelling unit loans or grants would still be a high impact use of money. We've also learned since that funding for folks to repair and replace their manufactured housing is extremely rare. A significant portion of our housing stock is manufactured homes, so this might be something we look at. We also might consider using some funds for other things like eviction prevention, or we could funnel most of the money toward the development of housing if the community determines that supply is really the priority here. So all of this is just to say that because the market continues to change and the resources for housing development and preservation continue to change, we will take a closer look at this when we have a better idea of what our funding mechanisms are. So next slide, please. So if you would like to get involved, you have a couple of options. The first is simply to join the coalition and subscribe to our email list on our website. I try to be pretty judicious with the emails that we send out, so you are not gonna get overloaded in your inbox. You're also welcome to email me if you want to participate in any of our areas of work this year. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Catherine. Does anybody have any questions for Catherine? I do have a couple, but I don't want you guys to go first. Okay. Catherine, that was great. One question I had, and I think I'm getting this figure from your presentation last year, but I think you had estimated that Livingston would need to develop 85 additional dwelling units per year for the next 10 years to meet economic demand or workforce demand. Is that, am I accurate in saying that, or has that number changed?
That estimate is actually from the Downtown Master Plan and their companion housing study, which were fantastic. I really commend the authors of those documents, and that was released last summer. So as far as I know, those numbers haven't been updated, but I think they're useful metrics to stick with for the time being.
Okay, thank you. And then my other, like, just kind of comment, or maybe just something anecdotal that I heard, and I was wondering if the Housing Coalition is thinking about this. In the county, I had a acquaintance tell me that his homeowner's insurance went up almost twice as much as it was last year because they were, you know, outside of 50 feet from a fire hydrant. And so if somebody's homeowner's insurance goes from $4,500 to $11,000, which is what this gentleman said, then that's going to become very cost prohibitive for a lot of folks in the county. Are you hearing that?
Yeah, I have been hearing that homeowners insurance is becoming increasingly burdensome. And, you know, what I hope is that some of the changes to the tax structure, particularly for resident homeowners in Montana, will provide a little bit of relief. But yeah, it's, you know, all of our costs for both purchasing and then maintaining a home are going up. So yeah, I think your point is well taken, that just because somebody owns and lives in a home and maybe has even paid it off doesn't mean that their housing is secure and they're not at risk of losing their home and their housing.
Yes, thank you. Okay, that's all I had. Anybody else have any questions before we let Catherine enjoy her vacation? Oh,
I mean, after, we do need to take.
public comment on this. Okay, that's fine. Catherine,
That was a
can you
great-
stick around for
great
some public
presentation.
comment?
Thank you.
Of course, going.
Forrest, did you have comment?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I just wanted to commend the presentation and all the information that you shared. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. And if you have feedback for how I can improve the presentation, I'm all ears. So
Perfect. Let's hear if we have public comment. Maybe we'll get some more suggestions from the audience. Would anyone like to make public comment on Catherine's presentation in the room? You can come up to the podium, state your name and address, and then pop your question up there. Thanks, Becky.
Becky Bird, 402 South 8th Street. Catherine, I just have a question of clarification. When you talk about income versus affordability for rent or mortgage, are those income numbers based on gross income or net income?
The figures that I provided on that slide of like the median household income for, those are from the American Community Survey conducted by the Census Bureau. And I think that's gross income, but I can double check on that for you.
Okay. And then I just have one personal comment as a homeowner for a house that was built in 1959, which has a lot of plumbing trolls involved. Last year, 2 years ago, actually, I had a very serious sewer line issue that I was responsible for, and the following year, my homeowner's insurance went from about $2,800 a year to over $5,000 for the one claim. And so obviously that was not something I could really absorb, and I was fortunate to be able to find another insurance company that provided me a reasonable premium to make, but I think it's very real. And so I feel at this point, I'm one disaster away from being unhoused. And it's a very real thing, especially when you're in a community where our infrastructure is incredibly vulnerable. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Becky. Anyone else in the room have a question or comment for Catherine? Okay, we're gonna look online here, Catherine, real quick. Anyone online have a question or a comment for Catherine? See anybody, Jen? Okay, last call for public comment on Catherine's presentation. Okay, hearing none, we'll close public comment, and thank you, Catherine, again for your presentation. It was very informative. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. I'll stay on for the rest of the proceedings, but thank you very much. I appreciate the well wishes.
And if anyone's interested in that slide deck, any of that data, it's in the packet from this evening on the city website. So you can access that slide deck from Catherine. Okay. Let's move on to what comes next. Let me just pull up my agenda.
Agenda's off.
Oh, okay.
Just make sure you say continued.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the continuation from our September 17th, 2025 meeting. We're going to continue the discussion of the proposed code updates, zoning text amendment recommendation to the city commission, and there is an action requested. So first we start with the staff report. Jennifer, if you would be so kind.
Any chance, you on right now,
Mhm.
so you'll let me know.
If you can see it.
Actually looks. Are you seeing it?
Fine.
Are we good? All right, thank you, Chair Wilcox. I will try to, since you saw the majority of this presentation, 2 weeks ago, I believe, 3 weeks ago, I will try to pop through and point out the things that have changed since the September 17th land use board meeting, and then also the open house that we had the following week. So this is, as I mentioned at the last meeting, the land use board, the consolidated land use board, currently, after recent legislative changes, will only be taking action and making a recommendation, taking action on the text amendment part of the zoning amendment. You can make recommendations for, the city commission to consider for the mapping, but I didn't think it made a lot of sense to bring forward the text amendments without the accompanying map amendments. both of those, the map and the text amendments will be considered together by the city commission. But the only action you're being asked to take tonight is for the text amendment.
Okay.
And so this is showing on the left. Again, we had a great turnout. Thank you for people who came to that open house. A lot of people asked how they could visualize, our maps, our proposed map changes. On the left is, basically a view looking down Park Street on the left side of the street is Depot Park, and on the right side is showing what our current zoning codes allows as far as heights. We don't have a height limit in the central business district right now, so anybody can build anything they want. It's been like that since I got here 3 years ago. On the, outside the central business district, so like further down along Park, I guess to the west, of like Yellowstone Street, I think it is. And also, along Park Street all the way, really almost to the river to the east, is currently zoned highway commercial, and the height limit there right now is 60 feet. Now, as you probably realize, most of that is not even close to developed as much as it could be, what our density and our height limits allow right now. But that is what's allowed. On the right side, you can see a rendering showing under the proposed zoning, what this will look like. So the CBD, we are recommending that it is limited to 60 feet in height. That is the lowest that we can, restrict it because of recent state legislation. So we are proposing to restrict it to where we can, which is 60 feet. And then along the, Park Street, where it is currently highway commercial, we are proposing to rezone that to a new district, which is light mixed use, which, the height limit there that we're recommending is 36 feet. So that's kind of showing you the difference between what people could do now as far as height and massing and what they would be able to do as we're proposing it. Zoning code, is very important because it is the regulatory means by which we can implement our growth policy, which we adopted in 2021. Growth policy is a visioning document. It's kind of a wish list. But the zoning code is the teeth by which you can actually implement that and regulate to that. The growth policy is not a regulatory document, the zoning code is. To align with that growth policy, which was adopted almost 5 years ago, and also to comply with recent state mandated changes to our zoning code. We need to update our code. It was never comprehensively updated after the growth policy. It has not been comprehensively updated, I think, since early 2000s, possibly late 1990s. So it's just been sort of fixed in pieces, parts. This is a comprehensive update that looks at everything. Doesn't mean every single thing has changed, but it looks at everything, the state of where we are now, the state of where our population is now, what's going on, the current situation with our infrastructure. It looks at kind of all that in conjunction with the growth policy and says, here's how we can regulate to get there. So as I said, the map amendments are for information only. You can make recommendations to City Commission, but you won't take action on that tonight. The legislative changes at the state level that we have no control over, and so I would ask that we maybe, for expedience tonight, try to limit discussion of these because there's nothing we can do. Those are basically, I'm not gonna read in the numbers and stuff, but they're related to building heights. They're related to, the powers of our Historic Preservation Commission. They are related to parking minimums. And the last one is related to how map amendments are done. There's a process to expedite those so that they no longer have to go through the land use board, and then 2 readings by ordinance before the City Commission, and then 30 days to take effect. They will now go straight to the City Commission, and they will be adopted by resolution, and they will be immediately effective. Again, nothing we have any say in. That is the state mandate. As far as the building heights, I do want to mention this again for those who have not been here before, who have not heard this, because I think it's important to this conversation, and we have received a lot of comments, public comments on building heights. The state has said that this is where you can restrict heights and this is what you can restrict them to. So, basically, in heavy commercial districts, central commercial districts, so like our CBD, and industrial, including light industrial, those districts, we cannot limit height or restrict height below 60 feet. So that is why for our CBD, even though for our downtown master plan, it said in some areas, maybe we'd like to see 30 to 40 feet. And towards the river where it's a little lower, we'd like to see 50 to 60. Can't do anything. 60 feet is the minimum that we can restrict it to in the central business district. So also, again, in our highway commercial district right now, which will change to, it's pretty much an even changeover to what we call general commercial. Very similar locations out at kind of those gateways, the interchanges with the interstate and highways. It is 60 feet as allowed by now, and it will continue to be 60 feet because those are heavy commercial areas. I think the big distinctions will be, we are proposing a new light mixed use district. It's not directly correlating to our current mixed use district, which the current mixed use allows 50 feet. The light mixed use, as we're proposing it, will be limited to 36 feet in height. That is mostly along Park Street, and around the, up by kind of the wellness center, that area along, the main road, Gallatin, Montana, Gallatin. Sorry, I should know that. And then also out of Park Street nearest to the downtown. For parking updates, I think it's important to note that, we can no longer, and this was changed earlier this year, so for accessory dwelling units, 2 years ago, the legislature said, we cannot, require an off-street parking space. So that requirement went away. They went in and did some more fiddling around with parking this year. And so now, no parking is required for existing buildings undergoing a change of use. That includes a vacant building that goes back into use, childcare facilities, deed restricted affordable housing units, and assisted living facilities. 1/2 parking space is required for each residential unit under 1,200 square feet in size, and 1 parking space will now be required for each residential unit over 1,200 square feet in size. Our current code requires 2 off-street parking spaces for a single-family residential house. If it's multifamily, 1 per unit is required. We can no longer do that. So we will be, we have to observe how large the structures is. If the single-family house is over 1,200 square feet in size, then we will have 1 off-street parking space instead of 2 that we can require. And if it's less than that, it's a 1/2 parking space. So basically, if you have 1 unit, you'd round up to 1. We can't just say build a 1/2 parking space. If it's 2 units, 2 multifamily units that are less than 1,200 square feet, we can now only require 1 off-street parking space. Nothing we can do. State has mandated that. I think the other big ones here, short-term rental uses, we are introducing them into the code to identify them. This is regulating their use. It's not restricting their use. It's basically just identifying them and regulating certain types in certain districts. It's not a restriction. It's not saying you can't do it. We're not proposing to say we limit or cap the number of short-term rentals anywhere. It's strictly a way for us to be able to track them and license them. But the first step to that is introducing the term short-term rentals into our zoning code where it currently is not. And I think we're one of the very few cities in Montana that does not have that term in our code right now, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Reorganize the definitions, trying to make it more user-friendly. Full disclosure, this has been brought up. I do realize that what is online right now, it's not very clean. There are some formatting, there are a lot of formatting things that need to happen. A general overview. Staff actually ended up finalizing this from our consultant, and we felt it was more important to get the content out here. And then once we had the content evaluated, analyzed, and hopefully at some point adopted by the city commission, then we will clean it up, we will capitalize where it needs to or bold where it needs to and redo the numbering. So I do understand it's not as clean as it will not look this way when it's adopted and cleaned up. So please bear with us. Use table updates. I wanted to highlight, and I've done this in staff packet that was online, some of the changes that we've made, in yellow since partially in result of, or, coming from the discussion we had at the September 17th land use board meeting, and also I think as a result of some of the comments we received. So this is just a highlighting, actually the accessory dwelling unit one, which is at the bottom of residential uses, all those ends, that was something I missed when we put this out there the first time. This is something we changed, less than a year ago at the city commission, because accessory dwelling units are actually only allowed in these districts if there is an existing residence already on the property. So that's why we have no, but then we have a footnote that I added saying if you have an existing residence, then you can have one. That's what the ends are for. See some other ones, assisted living. That was, we changed that to no from allowed by right. Which kind of seems not correct to me, but, light industrial, it is allowed. Community garden, we put that as allowed in light industrial. I'm happy to answer any questions about this, and we'll try to remember what our rationale was for this, but these are just the ones that we have changed. Some more conditional uses. I will say, and when you're looking at this, the A is allowed by right means if you own property and you want to do one of the uses that has an A by it in your zoning district, which these are listed at the top, then you have to go through a building permit, you have to observe setbacks, that kind of thing, but you don't have to go through any kind of a review process, a public review process, or even administrative. Unless it hits a certain threshold with larger developments by parking spaces or a number of residential units. That's an administrative site plan review process. If you see a C right now in our code, it's called a special exception permit. I think it has an S by it. I think we're the only ones in Montana that use that. So we just, to align with how best practices, how everybody else does it, not that we want to be like everybody else, but for these terms, it makes it a little simpler for people that are coming in, especially developers, maybe that aren't familiar, to understand what this is. It's just changing the name to a conditional use permit. Anything that you see a C next to for conditional use means that it does require a public review process. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you come through a review process. And we evaluate what the impacts will be on the surrounding and how to mitigate, what is the traffic that you're going to create from that. So again, a lot of those are uses that are either more intensive than your average, or maybe in some districts, they could have a larger impact than others. So yeah, that's the changes. I'm gonna actually ask you, Chair Wilcox, I can either go through and identify these, or I know that you had sort of 4 separate sections of public comments you wanted to address. So if you'd like, I could skip through this part and then come back and tell you what staff would recommend you do to support that versus that we would not recommend.
Yeah, let me pitch that to the board,
Okay.
was what I was thinking.
Okay.
And then see what they think.
Yep.
Okay, so here's my thoughts, you guys. So lots of material, lots of public comment. The way I saw us tackling this was sort of in 4 parts. Thinking about, though, that we can make recommendations on the map, but we are not voting on the map. Here are the 4 categories that I'm sort of proposing that we sort of bite off as we move through this. The first one is downtown CBD comments. There's comments about making the CBD too small. There's comments about the different zoning designations down there based on height. There's concern, the way I'm sort of thinking about it is there's sort of a concern about community character with the downtown versus infill, need for more density and housing. So that's sort of one category. The second one is the short-term rental conversation. I think that could use some time and consideration. The other one was setbacks, specifically in riparian areas. And I have questions around how many homes would be affected based on the current proposal and then some proposals that are in our comments. And then there are areas on the map that are concerns for flood. And so I kind of think that as a separate section. And then there was one comment, I think from someone about the need for an agricultural zone because we don't have any sort of open space zones that are consistent with the future land use map. So those are sort of the four, the downtown character versus infill, the short-term rental conversation, setbacks in riparian areas, and flooding concerns, specifically with considering some sort of agricultural zone. Does that make sense to everybody on the board? To kind of divvy the conversations up around those?
Sure.
And then depending on how far we get, because there was quite a bit of public comment, I think it's gonna take a lot of discussion. I think we're gonna hear a lot tonight. And then we're probably gonna have some pretty good discussions about it. It's possible we might be here till midnight, or we could think about pushing this to one more meeting.
I apologize, I can't stay up tonight.
I know,
That's
I
me.
do not want to stay until midnight either.
So
So that
that's
was,
happened in the past. I can't
yeah,
be-
no. So I would propose that if we, we sort of get through maybe one of these or two of these this evening, and if we need to, we push it back. My hope is that the land use board and the community are able to get through with a very solid recommendation to the commission by the end of November or beforehand. I think there's a lot of information. I think it's worth slowing our roll a little bit. There's a lot of comment. There's a lot of material. So that's my proposal, is that we think about, similar to the growth policy, we think about chunking this up.
So when you say the end of November, you're saying that what you're shooting for is the land use board by the end of November making a recommendation to the city commission?
I would say by November 19th, if we looked at different Wednesdays throughout the next 2 months, if we were able to cut, because it's a lot, and I think it's worth slowing down a little bit. If today's the 8th, we could look at the 22nd, we could look at the 5th of November, we could look at the 19th of November, and hopefully have a decision by the 19th. I'm just putting it out there because I've done something similar like this before, where you get just this massive amount of public comment, and granted, some even came in this afternoon. But I think if you are gonna get a really good engaged community document, that we could consider a process like this.
I like it.
Do we have to? So maybe what we'll do, Jen, given that that's kind of what and actually, Frank, I'm sorry, do you have any? Forrest. I do that to him all the time, sorry. Forrest, we're all nodding our heads in here, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I think that on agendas where we have action required, we should be very thoughtful about what else we put on the agendas. I feel like tonight's agenda is pretty packed, and it's probably not realistic for me to stick around for 2 or 3 hours to get through it all. So I'm going to have to bounce early. Say 7:30 is a hard stop for me. That 2 hours is, I think, a pretty good time frame to be expected for one of these evenings. So, we'll get through what we can, but if we have to push it and take our time to make sure it's thoughtful, then let's just stay focused and maybe not add other items that are not action items if these are priority. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just concerned that is there time for public notice to have all of those meetings before that deadline? Because I don't think there is.
Oh, there should be.
We don't have to notice land use board meetings
Okay.
moving forward. It's already been noticed. This is a continuation. Each one's a continuation. Once you have made a recommendation, again, I would just remind, this is an advisory commission, so it will be fully vetted through the city commission and our our city attorney. Once you make a recommendation, there has to be at least 15 days notice, and because our paper is published twice weekly, that means that if you're meeting on Wednesday, by Thursday morning, if I get it into the paper for that Saturday, 15 days after that Saturday before it can come in front of. So typically, if you're meeting the end of November, we're pushing this out to the city commission for their first reading to the second meeting in December. And in my experience, that will probably be canceled because of Christmas time.
The 4th of December or the,
No, it can't go to the 4th, because if you are still you're not making a recommendation till the end of November. In order for me to have 3 or 4 days to get it in the paper before they publish it, and for that to be 15 days of notice before the meeting, the earliest it can typically go is that would be the second Tuesday in December for the city commission meeting, for the first reading.
okay.
And
How many readings did they get to?
well, I mean, they also might wanna discuss
it
more
too.
than twice, so.
Okay.
We're gonna go through this exact same process again through the city.
So Quentin, let me ask
With,
you this.
with
Yeah.
public comment and
Yeah.
everything else.
Do you feel like it's beneficial for the land use board to do the most thorough job with the public? Or would you rather us do a very abbreviated job or the best in the shortest amount of time and send it to you guys to do the heavy lift? I always thought that we were trying to do the heavy lift on behalf of
Sure.
the
Yeah.
commission.
But
that
just
by
to
the
know,
time it
just,
got to
yeah, just so
you-
you know, obviously you guys know that we will go through the same
Same process.
process.
Yeah.
But, you know, that being said, we love. to have
Yeah,
as
if it
much
comes
fun.
to you in a
Right.
better,
In a good
more
format, then,
progressed.
right, then we can move it along faster.
Okay, so then let's the calendar again. Jen, so if we finished up by the November 12th
So I
and
actually.
you got
have
it in
to-
the 13th, then it would be on the 2nd and the 6th. Oh, you think the 16th?
So just FYI, the closer we get to elections, it's pretty much, even though they're mail-in, we don't have use of this room. So I have to look at the meeting rooms before I can commit. The only thing I know next week, the 2 meeting times that would be available in the evening are on Tuesday, since we will not have a Historic Preservation Commission meeting because we don't have anything up for an agenda. Would be to meet between 3:30 and 3:45. We are 4:45. We have to be out of here because there's another meeting at 5 or Friday
Okay,
for next week. I didn't look beyond that.
okay. Here's what I think we should do. Let's start with, let's get started this evening and try and at least tackle one of these. See how we do, see what time it is. Of course, if you have to go, you have to go. I would just have to say that most of these meetings, it's unpredictable. So sometimes they last a lot longer than we maybe want to be in here. How late were you here last night? 10? So it happens. I understand if you have to go. So let's get started and let's, I guess maybe, would you guys like to start with this downtown character versus density and infill?
Well,
And-
let me finish through to get to the recommendation real
Okay.
quick, and then, but I'm saying, do you want, I can skip these slides and go back to them according to what your
I
discussion.
think you might as well.
Okay, these two. We've talked about this alignment with the growth policy. Again, I can touch on those. This is just existing zoning versus proposed. Again, some of the districts have changed. The one thing we changed on the proposed, for high density residential mixed use, there's 2 uses or 2 districts that are quite similar. As far as types of uses that they allow, in the proposed, that would be the light mixed use and the high density residential mixed use. The way that the state, again, has said that here's the places you cannot restrict your height below 60 feet are central commercial, heavy commercial districts. I think I'd have to look at but basically, concentrated, heavy commercial areas in the center. by designating one of these as a lighter mixed use with the focus on being more neighborhood scale, 36 feet in height, there's kind of another suggestion here, if we're going into height tonight, of an allowance for LMU if it's a PUD that I would recommend. But basically, to say that these uses will be more of a neighborhood scale, less trying to attract people driving. It's not 100%, but this is where, because we're saying a light mixed use branches out from our core, it's not necessarily a central or heavy commercial areas. That would allow us, as we've defined it, to limit the height below 60. For the high density residential mixed use, the focus of that is residential, but it's allowing a higher density. But it's similar uses to the LMU scale. But also it's more intensive commercial activity than traditional residential districts, I guess. But it's still less than what we would want to allow in our core or in the highway commercial or general commercial districts outside the gateways. So again, we're recommending that the height be at similar to what R3 is now, the high density residential that we have now, 50 feet. But that is the way we have defined it. It does show that we are trying to make the focus on residential rather than commercial, which would allow us to limit it below that 60 feet. So I just want to explain when people are saying those uses are very similar. It's the focus of the district. It's how the uses, I guess, kind of densifying them, the intensity of them, whether, they promote transit, walking, neighborhood scale in certain places. So that is our aim for this. What I'm going to say about that. And then, yeah, that's pretty much, I think, it for me. I'm gonna bring it back to you and then I can address questions as you bring them up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of maps and stuff and I can pull stuff up if you want, but I'd rather you tell me what you need from me.
Okay, it's 6:50. Does anybody need a break before we usually break around 7? Do we want to dive into it?
Yeah,
Anybody
let's
need a
go.
body break?
Let's go.
Okay, so the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna discuss sort of so if it has to do with short-term rentals, setbacks are in riparian areas, or any of the flood concerns or the potential for an agricultural zone, put that on the back burner for a couple minutes. Anything else, especially around the CBD and some of those comments around the size of the CBD, et cetera, let's start there. Does that make sense? Okay.
How will public comment be handled?
So
Yes.
discussion first and then public comment, or public comment for, I can't remember how it goes. Public comment first on that?
I guess what I'm trying to get at is, can we take public comment for each of these since we're continuing the discussion? Technically, we only have to take it once and you don't have to take it in. I don't think that's the best way.
I think we should take, so is it come first and that, does public comment?
But generally,
first
the way
first?
the city commission does it, clarify any
Okay.
questions, open public comment,
Okay,
and then deliberate after that.
perfect. So clarifying questions, public comment.
Yeah.
Anybody have any clarifying questions?
I'm just trying to get this
I have
up there
clarifying
instead of.
questions.
I don't think it was that. That's all that we.
No, but I don't.
Okay, it doesn't sound like we do, so let's open it up to public comment so people who want to comment on this section can do it.
That's
Okay.
kind of what I was
Yeah,
hoping. since
got
we
it.
did it here.
Okay, I hope that makes sense to everybody in the room and online. We're gonna try and chunk this up. It's a very large document. There's a lot to discuss. So if you have comments on short-term rentals, setbacks in riparian areas, flood concerns, or the creation of a new agricultural zone, please hold off. Any other comments about the document? Come on up, name, address, and how many minutes does everybody get? Is it 4? And we'll start with people in the room. Ooh. Come on up to the podium, say your name and your address, and then we'll give you your 4 minutes.
Thank you, planning board. Randy Carpenter, representing Friends of Park County, 1108 South Platte in Bozeman. First of all, I'd like to say I commend the work of the staff, the consultants. the zoning committee, in developing a code that I think in a lot of ways really will meet the community's future needs. In particular, we really enthusiastically support the proposed new code's replacement of the city's auto-oriented highway commercial zoning with a low-density mixed-use zoning district. We think that will almost certainly result in more housing options and vitality, in the city's core, improving housing affordability, meeting the stated desire in the growth policy for less auto-dependent, more pedestrian-oriented growth patterns. And, I think effectively respond to shifting development trends that are moving away from a strict segregation of land uses toward a more traditional mixing of land uses. I think these are important and major, and I honestly believe, transformative changes from what could happen if we stayed with the existing code right on. I think that the code's limit on building heights in the downtown to 60 feet. I think that's a big improvement over the current code, which has no limit. As a planner, a little resentful that the state talks a good thing about local control and then takes it away every session, but I'll leave that. I also think that the building height of 36 feet, the height restriction 36 feet in the LNU is totally appropriate. The highway commercial is now 60 feet. I think that, these height limits will help keep the character of downtown Livingston along Park Street at a more human scale. So for the core of the community, we believe the city is proposing very positive changes. And again, we commend the work you all have done on that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Okay, yep, come on up to the podium, name and address, please.
I just had a quick comment. When I served on the Downtown Historic Preservation Commission, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is just a question, didn't we have a height limit when Salazinski, they want to put in that apartment complex where Industrial Towel is? Wasn't there a limit? They wanted 5 stories and we had to restrict them to 4. Am I wrong, Jennifer?
Hold on one second, just name and address. We're gonna try and,
Oh,
we're gonna try and be a little
I'll
less
just-
conversational and more formal.
yeah,
Just because we have so much
that was
going
my
on.
question.
Okay, so the question was there a height restriction when Industrial Towel put their proposal in? And my assumption is no.
Or
Or
the,
was it?
So, Industrial Towel has not, all they have come through is the historic board for the demolition request,
Okay.
and they have applied to, and I believe received their approval for a demolition permit. They have not submitted a building permit application for the new build.
oh,
When they do, they, depending on when that comes in, if it comes in before, if a complete building application is received by the city before this new code goes into effect, then they are not restricted by height.
okay, that was the clarification I wanted.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Anybody else have public comment in the room? Okay, let's go online. Is there any public comment online? I don't see any.
Steve. That was for Randy.
Okay,
We do the time.
I
I'll
don't
do
see
the
anything
timer.
for this. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't see anything for the general.
okay,
Um,
just for this topic.
thank
Okay,
you.
last call for public comment on the topic that we were discussing, which is the downtown CBD district, et cetera. Seeing none, we're gonna move on. Okay. Who wants to start with comments or discussion
For the CBD.
for the CBD portion of the plan?
I understand it, so I'm good.
Okay, do you have anything? I can go. Okay, so I just want to again reiterate my appreciation for public comment. And I also want to reiterate my appreciation for written public comment. It's very helpful I am not, you know, I don't know everything and I don't know how everybody's view is, so these are really helpful for me. There are a lot of comments in here, so I really wanted to make sure we took the time to address a lot of these. So the way I'm understanding concerns that we're getting from the public is we have a lot of people who have made comment, and all these comments are in the packet, that there is a lot of concern about heights. They appreciate, to Randy's comment, the staggered heights that we have in this draft with the LMU, the shrinking of the CBD. So you go from 36 to 60, right? There is a portion of the community who is very pleased with that because they feel like it preserves the character of the downtown. There is another group of folks in the comments that we've received who are very concerned that we have shrunk the CBD too far. It impedes the ability to increase infill in the city, which is something that was very important during the growth policy. And when I say that, it means that if you can't, when we talk about infill, during the growth policy, there was a lot of concern that we are going to grow out to the perimeter of the city limits or into the donut or the extraterritorial jurisdiction. And at that time, the community was very concerned about growing out and avoiding sprawl, and they really wanted to grow in. But that means they wanted to grow up. So there is a group of, there are multiple public comments in here that say that the CBD has been shrunk too much and that we are limiting the ability to utilize PUDs in the CBD. Because PUDs can only go up to 40, they can only go, I think, is it up to 40 feet?
Up to 40 feet in the R2 district.
In the R2, okay. And use of URA funding. There was also a concern about some of the different, the shrinkage of the CBD and the use of URA funding for affordable housing opportunities.
And I can address that because
Okay. You don't see the connection?
well, I see the connection, but the change in the CBD
Mhm.
to LMU or anything else doesn't change the URA boundaries.
Okay, perfect. So that opportunity for funding for the URA is still there in the.
Funding
the LMU.
exists. I believe that the comment, the intent or what it was getting at and the commenter, I believe is online, so you could check, but my understanding is it's to maximize how to leverage the URA funding that's
Right.
available. So whereas if you're saying, well, we are only allowing this height and this many units, then leveraging the URA money is only going against 10 units versus if you allow that greater height, then you would be able to leverage more URA funds to get more units, more density, but.
I'm happy to clarify that comment if that would be helpful. I don't know if that's out of order, but I'm available.
Let's wait. Oh, Catherine, can you hold, please? We did have public comment and I'm really trying to like keep our meetings like running smoothly without like a lot of back and forth, but we will, once we vote on this, if we do vote on something, then you'll have a chance to make a comment again. So if you just hold tight, I totally appreciate it. But yes, so to Catherine's point, she was the HRDC was one of the public comments that are in the packet that address this concern. So, I guess what I am curious about the Consolidated Land Use Board is anybody interested in addressing these comments about the size of the central business district? Are we all comfortable with how it is currently recommended by the city? And is there any discussion around some of these concerns about the inability to maximize infill via height for the downtown area? And that's just how my perception, you guys might have a different take on how those comments were presented.
I have one question. Is that restriction for the area around the central district, the light mixed use? Are there any options for conditional use, like to go higher in that zone? Could you do that?
No, we could say, so we're going from 36 to 60.
Mhm.
We could say, why don't we go 36 to 50 to 60, right? Cause you could do some HMU in there.
So you can grant a variance on height. I mean,
Okay.
it's part of the zoning code, and so
Okay.
you can't grant a variance on use. If it's not identified as allowed as a conditional use or allowed, you can't, the variance is not an option for that, but the variance process, you can. Outside, again, the PUD is a little more prescriptive, right? You
Mhm.
give us something and we'll allow you to expand up to here in R2. But somebody could come in and say, anywhere in town and say, this use is allowed, I want to build my house up to 40 feet tall in the R1 district. And that is a process, it's a public process that goes through the city commission. They are our board of adjustment. I did want to say one thing, and I think just because now I realize kind of how you're going through this, I've never been part of a decision-making process the way you're doing it, so this is kind of new to me. There are some recommendations, again, that I have made based on the comments that people have said, we think this, and discussing with staff, looking back with SDJ's discussions, we think that they are actually supportable recommendations and that we would. Some of these pertain to this exact thing in the
Okay.
CBD, so I just want to make sure that kind of gets promoted a little bit.
Okay, so maybe, cause these were just, this is the discussion point. I mean,
Yep. Yeah,
like,
it's yours.
these are some things that I found from public comment that I thought would be really appropriate for us to address.
Yeah.
But if you have some recommendations that you didn't realize were part of this like section of the thing, then maybe we should hear your
Yeah,
recommendations.
staff.
Well, just,
Yeah.
and again, this is super quick, it's on this, but as far as the light mixed use, one of the recommendations was consider increasing the height limits of light mixed use so that it is differentiated from R2, because right now they're both maxed at 36 feet. One of the things that was brought up was especially like for PUDs, the allowance of if you have a PUD proposed in a light mixed use district, rather than just make the R2 the only district where you're allowed that additional height up to 40, that light mixed use would also allow that.
Okay.
And I actually think I support that suggestion because it still would provide sort of that transect, like you have the CBD and then you're stepping down a little bit if somebody wanted to, but it still allows a little bit more density than, and height than R2, also so that would encourage, if the market's there, for a developer, I guess, to make that more enticing to build there
Okay,
and to develop there. And so I would support that change that was brought about. That's this one.
okay.
I don't think anything else on my kind of immediate was tied to the CBD. So that was the only one I wanted to bring up because that is sort of, I think, what you're asking about.
Okay. So you're basically saying, and you are proposing that any LMU, the height restriction would now be at 40 feet instead of 36,
No, not exactly.
Okay.
So for PUDs.
only for PUDs in the.
Planned unit
LMU.
developments, and again, the planned unit development right now, the minimum size, and this, we didn't really change much in the PUD because it came through just within the last year, a little over a year ago, I think. Planned unit developments, can only be proposed and brought through on parcels that are a half acre or larger,
Mhm.
under the same ownership. So there aren't a ton of where we're proposing the light mixed use to be parcels that would meet that size, certainly that are vacant, but it would allow people, some of those parcels, if somebody did have multiple together, even if right now they look like they're separate properties or parcels, if they wanted to, purchase, people were selling two adjacent properties that ended up being a half acre or larger, and they wanted to propose a PUD, that allowance, that incentive, the same incentive that's there for a PUD that's proposed in an R2, I believe it's a good idea actually
Okay.
to allow that in the light mixed use.
Okay.
So those would be the two districts for a PUD
Okay,
that you could, without going through a variance, you can still go through a variance process and ask for
outside of a
P-
PUD.
outside of a
Right.
PUD, but the PUD is needing to be prescriptive. You provide this and we'll give you that.
Okay, perfect.
Gets on for it.
Okay.
PUD.
Yeah, which is
Yep.
why we made those.
Right.
Okay, that is very helpful. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? There were a couple other concerns in here on those. And again, it really just had to do with infill and, the size of the CBD. I guess that I'll just say that at this point, I'm comfortable with the zoning designations that you've put in here. Now that we know that we can ask for variance on height or PUDs are allowed in the LMU. I think that we have done our due diligence in doing our best to maintain the community character and allowing for more infill in the quote unquote downtown URA CBD area.
I do have a question. So the zoning map, proposed zoning map is what we're talking about here, right?
Yes,
And are we advising on that or are we just commenting?
you can advise, but you can't, and I'm sorry, I realize this makes zero sense. This didn't come from me. None of us think this process makes sense
Yeah,
to
got
the
it.
map amendment by resolution. But you can provide advice and advise and recommendations to the city commission about the maps, because to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to bring it to you segregated. But your action, and actually, I will say, the motion, we can take notes, but I believe the motion needs to be made all at once at the end. You have one motion, you have one vote versus voting on different things. I
Mhm.
don't think that's actually how we're supposed to do it, but we can take all your recommendations for, we're not gonna vote on this, we're not gonna make a motion on the map, but here's our recommendations when you consider it city commission. Your motion, to make a formal recommendation to city commission will just be on the zoning districts, but it can be informed through your discussions on the map. Does that slightly make sense?
So then I have another question. Most of these things you're talking about are the map.
This particular
Yeah.
section.
I mean,
Yeah, that's that.
even I think in the riparian areas, that the setbacks is kind of a map issue, which we have no control over. So I'm wondering why
There is language on short-term rentals.
Sure.
And
it should-
riparian
shouldn't it be
areas.
Stick with just the words of the document.
Right, the text.
Okay.
The text,
Okay.
right?
Well, I think it's important to comment on this, right? To address the concerns and have some discussion about, what recommendations we make, even though we're not being asked about that, right? So, I don't know that we have to belabor it, but I think it's worth
Having a conversation. about it.
having that conversation and maybe putting forth some advice.
Yep, and my impetus really behind a lot of this is we got a lot of comments from the public. I want to make sure the public understands that we've heard them.
Yeah.
And we are actively discussing some of their concerns
Yes.
and maybe,
Directing their comment to city commission, who is actually making a decision on the map, as opposed to us that are just kind of advising.
I think we can just talk, I think like we just mentioned, this is a,
Yeah.
on this
We've heard
particular one, I think we've got a recommendation. It's really
All
agreeing with the
comments
staff.
that you guys receive can be forwarded.
Oh, all these are gonna go, yeah, all the
They'll
information.
all come to us.
But
And
as
they'll
far as
just send them to them anyway.
If it's an informal recommendation about the map, or this is,
Yeah.
the way I was thinking of it, again, this is all new to us too with the resolution, is sort of like here's our motion, and then, as additional, like FYI, here's also discussion points. What I tried to do in my staff report, as you've seen, that came back to you, is just to provide a brief overview of what was discussed before. When I take the staff report I submitted to you, and that goes to the city commission, I typically do like a summary of the main points of discussion so that they kind of know what was brought up. And in this case, we could do sort of like a non-binding, not that any of these are binding, but recommendation, just things that we would like you to consider. You can call it however you want, but
That'd be great.
yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know that I have, on this specific thing, thanks for the clarification about the PUD, the ability to grant a variance. I think that, my only comment would be in support of it. I mean, I'm assuming that we're going to, at some point in the future, there'll be another zoning, revision. We have a lot of expansion room before that, is what I see. And I think by sort of limiting this, we have the ability to, better ability to assure that we're infilling, right? So I think that.
I agree. Okay.
And I will say the city's point on that is also, just. We're also trying to be cognizant and balance the recommendations with what we believe the infrastructure that's in place can support, right? And that's the big one.
Yeah, agreed. Because I was also thinking about parking.
Well,
Yeah.
Which you can't.
We have to think about it. That's
Right,
about all we
but if
can
you
do.
go up, and I know that the point is to have walkability, but the other reality is that,
Maybe more along the lines of plumbing.
yeah, and plumbing.
that's
That's
infrastructure, that's.
the stuff that makes me nervous, yes.
Okay, so I guess our recommendation is changing the ability to have a PUD in the LMU, which you already had.
Well, PUD is allowed in the LMU, but to, add the incentive of the height
height,
addition to 40
That's
feet
not in there.
in the LMU district. So I would adjust the text in the LMU or in the PUD section to say that you could have that prescriptive, right? Like this for that, or formulaic, I guess maybe is a better word, for allowing that 40-foot height extension beyond the 36 feet in LMU. So the two districts where that would be allowed for a PUD, if we get one of the public benefits we've identified, right, in the PUD ordinance, then additional height up to 40 feet would be a developer incentive that we would give in the R2 or the LMU district. Somebody could still have a PUD and say, hey, I'd like to also ask for a variance. It's just not, it's not a defined, hey, this is one of the things. That's more just a regular variance to be considered. Last thing I'm gonna say, I talk about, and I do wanna make it clear, like, anybody can ask for a variance. Anybody can ask for a map amendment. I've been here 3 years. I think I've brought 3 variances through.
Yeah.
I've recommended to several people that staff would find it hard to support a variance. But the ultimate decision is with the city commission. Out of the 3, the 2 were approved, 1 was not. But if we do this right, and I'm not saying there won't be looking at this again, we're gonna have a growth policy update in the next year, and then we will immediately go and look at our code and say, do we need to adjust anything? But lots of map amendments, lots of variance requests, to me is kind of an indicator that something's off with our code.
Yeah.
So if we were to see a lot of people come in and say, hey, this is, we need variant, we want a variance, and it's not just people looking to develop and really expand, but your average homeowner, then that tells us we need to look at the code.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. Catherine's head is bobbing because she knows she has something she wants to say. But let's open up comment on this particular portion because we said we were going to.
Yeah.
And then we'll move on to the next one.
Got it.
Okay, is there any public comment on this
Can
section?
you clarify what we're talking about?
We were talking about
Downtown
the downtown CBD density, public comments, the size of the CBD.
The LMU.
The LMU, because I think this also extends out, the LMU that is being proposed along Park Street, whereas right now it is highly
It's
commercial.
the yellow and the purple on your map,
Let me-
right?
Yes, it is. Let's see. Yeah, you can't see this at home, so let me share. I know Catherine knows what this looks like, but, yes, this is right now, this is the CBD we're proposing, so it's removing about a block and a half over here from the central business district, south of Clark and Geyser, basically to where the park is. And then there's a little bit over here, I believe. So it slightly condenses the CBD. This then would become that light mixed use versus now it is CBD. And then this also, we are proposing to go from highway commercial to light mixed
Light
use.
mixed.
Did I say
Yeah.
that wrong? No. Okay.
There you
Yeah,
go.
right.
Yeah, so
So we're
that's
really
really
talking, so the comments essentially are on the purple and the yellow.
correct. I believe that's kind of what most of the
Yeah.
comments we received were, was
Yeah.
the yellow approaching the CBD along Park Street and then the yellow surrounding that we're proposing to transfer over from.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what we're taking comment on. Does anybody have any comment in the room?
There's one canal.
I know, sorry. Okay, Catherine, do you have comment?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'll start. Oh.
We can hear you.
Yeah. Yep.
I guess I will start by clarifying my comment related to aligning the entitlements in the zoning district regarding density with the URA boundaries. I don't know what page it is in your packet, but page 5 of my written comments. I noted that nearly all of the parcels in Livingston's core slated for downzoning also fall within the URA district boundaries. And downzoning these parcels would not only significantly limit how they are redeveloped or improved, but also limit, as City Manager Gager noted in the open house recently, the URA district's long-term revenue potential. And therefore its ability to fund rehabilitation and redevelopment in the district. So, given the availability of these funds and how unique and precious they are in filling the gap between what it costs to build, buy, or rent, and what it costs, what folks here can afford, I think it would be most efficient to zone areas within the URA district boundaries, which largely are in the downtown core, in a manner that allows increased density recommended in the future land use map and in the growth policy as of right. I very much appreciate the discussion about allowing for increased heights in the light mixed use district. However, that district is described as a low and moderate density district. And what is proposed in the growth policy, both in terms of the future land use map, but also in terms of a handful of strategies, including 3.111, encourage additional residential density within the downtown area of the city. Strategy 3432, encourage development near transit routes and active transportation infrastructure to promote development that produces minimal strain on the environment and existing transportation infrastructure, which, as you can see in my map of the transit stops overlaid over the proposed zoning map, are largely concentrated in the downtown area. And objective 5.1.4, promote a mix of housing within neighborhoods that support a variety of household income levels, household age groups, and housing types. Why don't we just zone these areas to the density that is suggested in the growth policy by right? It is very expensive and risky for a developer, and takes a really long time for a developer to compile a bunch of contiguous properties so that they would be eligible for the PUD ordinance incentives. So the likelihood of that happening seems pretty slim, unless there's just like a fire sale of land in all of the properties zoned light mixed use. So I just want to share that. I also want to share my perspective on and understanding of variance requests. They are different from conditional use permit requests, in that conditional use permit requests, in addition to be focusing on use, represent uses that the community has already said they would like to see. And so basically the community is like, yeah, you can do this as long as you mitigate impacts. However, the zoning regulation in section 3083A says that variances are only appropriate, quote, when strict application of the standards would create an unnecessary hardship that significantly limits the reasonable use of the property. If a developer or property owner purchases a property knowing what the zoning is on that property that includes a height limit, I very much doubt that they would be eligible for a variance under this description. So while variances can frequently be used for setbacks, right? If you're on a property and there's a creek running through it and there is a setback from the creek perhaps, and you need to build a house there, that's a common area where I've seen variances, but height variances, in my experience, and maybe it's different with the city of Livingston, but they are very difficult to achieve. And they are only given under unnecessary hardship conditions. Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Catherine. So I appreciate that summary. What's that?
Do you want?
Yes.
Just tell me know what you want.
Yes, does the staff have a recommendation on
Yes.
that particular?
So I do think it's important to bring up the future land use map sorry, I tried to bring up the maps that Catherine actually wonderfully laid out and showed us. Future land use map on the south side, and again, growth policy is a vision document. It's what you would like to see. The zoning code is regulatory, and the difference being, you can put anything you want in a growth policy. And I encourage people to shoot for the moon. But when it comes to regulating, we have laws and legality that we have to stay within. And so the future land use map, as you'll see right here, everything now that is R2 south of Park Street in the future land use map is high density residential. That is one part of the growth policy. There are also several other parts of the growth policy that say, sorry, I'm bringing up my, I don't know if this is actually, can you still see this, Catherine? Okay, encourage higher densities and a wider range of land uses that are compatible with adopted plans and where existing or planned short-range community facilities and infrastructure can support them. Evaluate and amend the zoning ordinance to allow for higher densities and wider land uses in areas that can support such development. Rapidly allowing and encouraging densification on the south side of the city right now with our current water and sewer and public infrastructure. The city staff would basically respond to that by saying it cannot be supported right now.
Okay.
Beyond, we think, what a light mixed use would allow. If that changes, and again, I asked this today in our department head meeting, we have had past few years, I don't know how long it's gone back, but the downtown alley projects where they are taking the original clay mains that are underground from when the city was built. And they are making those, updating them, expanding them, making them so they're not clay anymore. I don't honestly know what materials they're using, sorry, but all of those improvements that have been done and the next phase are roughly consistent with being able to support what we're showing as the proposed CBD. So I just, and meaning, if in the CBD at a 60-foot height limit, or probably even higher if people wanted to do that, within the next phase of those downtown alley improvements, that could all be supported with our infrastructure. But when you start talking about branching out along Park Street and in the areas that are now R2, so like the numbered streets and the alphabet soup, and just making all that high density, it's great and it's a great goal to shoot for if that's what people want, but our infrastructure cannot support that right now. And so that is what we're also trying to balance.
So again, this is all in reference to a map and boundaries on a map, right? And this is just our advisory. We need to stick to text. Be sure we get that, right? So, but the map, for those that want to comment and that decision will come from the city commission, right? The approval of the map.
Okay.
So would that be a more
If these are
appropriate
changed, yeah.
venue to sort of finalize, anybody in the public in general to make comments at that point? It isn't our purview, that'll
Right.
be yours, right?
Okay,
And
I'm
yeah.
hearing you.
No, and I'm not wanting to shut this down, but it's just kind of
Yeah.
keep in mind what our goal is as we move through.
Yep,
here, right?
fair.
And I think there's a lot of good points being brought up, and that should be directed
To the city.
to the city about boundaries and how these are all map comments, right?
City commission, just make that.
Yeah, city
not- not
commission.
city staff.
City commission.
City-
Yeah,
So,
we get enough heat already.
yeah, so
Fair, we
Yeah.
can move on. I was really trying to chunk up.
I think
The
it's
discussion
great, I
started
think it's a
here.
great way to do it.
Okay. So I think unless there's any other comment on this, and to Frank and John's point, this is map amendment stuff. It sounds like you had recommendations, and I'm almost wondering if we should hear your recommendations first.
That was the main one about this
Yes.
was
Okay.
related to the CBD and the LMU extension and all that was to, again, if we're not looking at the map, kind of not much. I mean, if there's not a challenge or there's not a question about how we're describing light mixed use, and again, it's very difficult to not include the map when you're thinking about, because
Right.
is light mixed use the way that we're describing it in the text? If you look at the map, is that appropriate where we're proposing it? But if you don't have the context of the map, does anybody have
It's
a problem with
literally
it?
about context, right?
And
what
unfortunately,
everybody's going
we're all flying
to
blind here. This is
Yeah.
the new one, so,
Exactly.
bear with us, please, because this is very unusual.
And it's the state that's driving, so.
Yeah, let's make that clear again. Not us, state. Talk to your state reps, please.
Okay,
Yeah, so it would just be changing from text wise, the
Okay.
PUD part for the light mixed use. Anywhere there's light mixed use, but it is kind of concentrated in those areas to allow for that height incentive for developers up to 40 feet.
okay.
So it's
From
not just the R2,
30
from 36 where we've capped it.
Where are we?
The difference in the 36 feet in height between R2 right now and LMU is, and we did remember we changed this at the last meeting, is from what I originally brought you, which was to keep R2, have it at 30 feet unless you have a certain pitch of roof, and then it can go up to 36, and that just kind of brings it in from that box that, people can build to. And then for light mixed use though, it is just 36 feet.
Yeah.
Regardless of roof pitch. And now if it's a PUD, then they could bring it up to 40. If there's something else I would say in the text that could be considered based on the information Catherine's bringing forward and her suggestions or recommendations from Park County Housing Coalition and HRDC. If you wanted to consider tweaking what's allowed to come through PUD, size-wise, zone-wise, that would be one way that the text could address this, because right now,
We could make a recommendation for 50.
you could make the recommendation for 50. You could make the recommendation for light mixed use, or for PUDs not to be half an acre. They could be whatever, a quarter acre. I'm just saying that might be one way to address it through the text versus the map.
The map.
I don't know if I'm prepared to make that.
I don't-
I would have to think about it a
I'm
lot,
not trying to make it more complicated. I'm just,
unless somebody else is.
No.
I'm just trying to address public comment. Okay.
Well, my only comment on there, and I'm not making this recommendation, but my thought is if you want to see that stair stepping.
Yeah.
If we feel that's important, right, the PUD could say 50 feet.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
And allow PUDs in LM.
That we've already
PUDs,
established.
if
We
you wanted to do LMU
Yeah.
to be, so I'll wear this, and again, if you wanted to look at LMU, we're looking at the way we've proposed it anyway. Is kind of surrounding where the new wellness center will go along there. And again, this does not mean that people that have single family homes or something else, that can't all stay the way it is now. I know there's some mobile home community up there, all of that can stay. This just expands, increases what they're allowed to do, but it doesn't mean you can't have that anymore. And so I don't want people to think that like this changes, and so now I have to take that away. If you're operating, whatever use you're doing is legal right now where you are, and we change the uses that are allowed or expand them, you are legally non-conforming and you can continue that use. There's some timeframes on it and stuff, but for the most part, it's not gonna impact if you're doing, if something is the way your property is being used changes with this code. We've tried to make it so that that doesn't happen a lot, but all these areas, if you were to do that and say that you wanted to allow for PUDs in the light mixed use area as we proposed it, and again, this is something that you guys can, wanted to go up to 50 feet, 40 feet, whatever you wanted, if you wanted to change the minimum lot size for a PUD to come through, you can do that. But it would have to be across all of wherever ends up being zone light mixed use, if you're talking to light mixed use. Unless there's an overlay district, we can't say like all light mixed use on Park Street South of the tracks can do this, but all light mixed use north.
Yeah,
can't.
that's where it gets tied into,
I get
it's
nervous.
always in reference to context, right? It's the map, right? And so this is it's a tough.
Talk to your state
Yeah,
representative, please.
yeah, this is really, I think my where I'm at is just leave it,
Me too.
just leave
Okay.
it for now.
So not with the 40 feet that we're recommending,
I would say.
Yeah, the
take that,
40,
Yes,
yeah, go with that.
Yeah.
at least to the 40. Okay.
yes, please. That's what I would
Right.
recommend.
I'm not
The
trying to
city
push that on anybody, I just
No,
want to
no,
make sure
no.
I understand.
I think that's fair. Okay. Okay.
Be a lively discussion in the city commission.
Pass the whole thing. Okay,
I'm
so
gonna be sick that day.
I think we have kind of taken care of this piece. We can move, so I do have some text changes that don't have to do with these other things, and they're like having to do with chickens and things like that. Do you have are there changes that you have made based on public comment that you would like to go through, and then we can take a break?
Yeah, and these
Okay,
are
does
quick.
that make sense? That
These are
the-
super quick, I would
okay.
say. Actually, the chicken one is on here, I believe.
Okay, good.
So the top, the prohibited animals, no livestock or fowls defined, blah, 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 add in laying hens in there. I have no issues with that. So as long as it can be allowed, and again, all this will be vetted through our city attorney before it is adopted. But if we had him vet everything we're not bringing to you, that would be a whole lot of money for nothing. So, but yeah, I don't see concerns with laying hens. I think the big concern is roosters, when I
Yep.
understand the noise they can make. So I think that's reasonable. It allows people to provide eggs for themselves and maybe make a little extra money if they wanted to sell them or whatever. Please don't go butchering chickens in the street and stuff. And I
Can we,
think
like,
neighbors won't
Hawaii
like that, but
everywhere?
yeah, but, that I thought was actually a great recommendation, and so I support that. I think it aligns with some of the other things in the growth policy. The species, I thought we had done this with adding the word native species, but that's absolutely what I meant to add.
Okay,
Give preference, so as far as for landscaping, the xeriscaping, edible plant native species, yes, I agree with that. That should have been in there, and so that actually was my oversight.
perfect.
So if y'all are good with that, I would say I recommend that. Again, I think that people need to be allowed to comment on it, but, the public, we did this one. That one is no. This one is, I think, kind of general, and I agree with it. Supportive and transitional housing really should be allowed sort of by right, when assisted living is allowed.
Yep.
And I agree with that. Assisted living, again, we have a no, and I think just because and I need to look at the definition of how we've defined assisted living. I don't think is limited to number, but some of the others are. But we have it as, so this would be supportive and transitional housing. We actually have as conditional use in R1. So then I would say if we want to make all those align, assisted living facilities should be a conditional use in R1. And then, these should be allowed. So this supportive transitional housing, I'm sorry, because I'm not actually showing this to people at home, I don't think, if anyone's still there. Yeah. So yeah, it basically this right here, the supportive, I don't know if you can see my cursor. The supportive transitional housing would basically be changed to align with the use table for assisted living down here. And assisted living, again, this was suggested by SDJ, the way they've seen it elsewhere as community use versus residential uses. One of the recommendations was to move it up under residential uses. I don't have a concern with that either way. I don't personally see an issue with it, so I will leave that to you.
I like the idea of popping it up. I consider an assisted living as a residential. And not a community use. You know, it's not like product or something.
Okay, somebody has. What else will be covered tonight and when you will end?
We can't,
We would love that.
we're gonna keep going until,
Frank says that's enough.
yeah.
Yeah.
Before you just can't take it anymore. Keep going.
Okay, so,
Is everybody-
are you, does that?
Is that all of them?
I think that's all that I had here. One's on short-term rentals and, we're not talking about that right
Okay.
now. And then the other one is, yeah, I think that's all I had here that I pulled out.
Okay.
If I missed something, please bring it up. I'll read through these all again. Like I said, it's kind of a lot at the last minute, but these were the ones that stood out to me when I went through and I said, yeah, that makes sense. And
Okay, perfect. There was something about manufactured homes being on foundations. Is that like a permanent foundation and they're requesting that they are not required to be on
I
a
did
permanent
not put that
foundation?
in. So that is a building code
Okay,
issue. And what I want to say is, that there was some question about, well, can it be brought into the zoning code? Because we had, the current code has tiny homes listed, it has like, modular homes listed, it has manufactured homes, mobile homes, and they're all identified. We wanted to try to simplify it by saying it's a residence, it's a residence. If it meets the building code for residence, doesn't really matter whether it's tiny or not. We allow it where residential uses are allowed. So we pulled all of that out. We had some requirements for anchoring manufactured homes and mobile homes, and we'll for this discussion, we consider it the same.
okay,
So there's some different things, but we consider those the same. They're residential units.
okay,
Is the way we want to look at them.
okay.
Yes, they require some sort of anchoring. If somebody is renting and the mobile home community has already done that, great. You just, my understanding, and I talked to our building director before this meeting so that I understood it, because I am not up on all the construction methods, but basically there's like a wire winch or something, or there's something that connects it to that poured concrete. But the reason being is, you know, you have gas lines and you have your water lines and all that, and if it's not anchored and that wind blow, safety wise, it's a concern from the building department.
So it's an anchor, not a permanent pad.
Well, you have to pour the permanent pad if it's not there.
Right, okay.
But then you affix to it, and then if you leave, if you're only renting,
Leave your-
you leave, the pad stays there and you unhook whatever the wire is.
Okay.
You know, it would be great if mobile home communities, if we could encourage them to put that in place before. But we've also heard from Park County Housing Coalition that they should be reviewed as any other subdivision. So, that could be one thing we look at in the subdivision regs, is that something legally the state will allow us to consider infrastructure that a mobile home community that is coming through a subdivision process would have to put in. I think that we can look at that, but for the zoning code, others at staff and the building department have said they don't feel it's appropriate to put it in here.
Okay, perfect, then we'll leave it out. Okay,
Can I ask one question about that? What you consider a residence? Would that also include like alternative buildings like stucco straw bale houses
Anything that meets our
Birch
building code,
like that?
I don't know that all those would meet them, but yes, if they can meet our building code, if there's something that they can do beyond what is done somewhere else, because everywhere has, most people follow the IBC, the International Building Code. Some places kind of go beyond it, or they have some allowances. Some people allow gray water to be recycled and used. Funny enough, Boulder County did not when I was there, which shocked me. But there's some tweaks to, but in general, most people say International Building Code, this is what we adopt, this is what we use. And Montana at the state level has, especially my understanding is for communities that are general powers and are not governed by a charter, which ours is general powers and not governed by a charter. We are limited into where we can go beyond maybe what the state allows. The state says it's the IBC, so trying to go above and beyond or differently, my understanding from talking with the building department is that we don't have that ability to do that. While, and I don't know if it's just tied to the fact that we're not under a charter, but I know that definitely restricts our ability to go outside the state.
okay.
Did that answer?
I think so.
Yeah. You can make it work for the building code. We're trying to make it so that there's all kinds of different residents, right? There's tiny homes. It's fine. Tiny homes that are on wheels. You can't, you have to have it anchored, but you can have it anchored and make it so you surround it and tie it down to whatever. And then if you want to take off and move somewhere else with your tiny home and your trailer, move it. But while it's sitting there and it's considered a residence and hooked into our utilities, it has to be anchored. And I would say wind is probably one of the big reasons, but
Not so much earthquake, but wind,
Yeah.
yeah.
so.
Okay. All right, I think we're at a point where we can take a break. And then I'm happy to keep going. I have thoughts on short-term rental setbacks and flood concerns in an agricultural zone. I have thoughts on that. If you guys want to do that tonight, I'm happy to just whip through them. If nobody, I mean, if you'd like to do that.
Yeah,
let's-
we could just review it,
Yeah.
right? We don't necessarily have to make a,
Well, we would need to make a text recommendation. I mean, I would think that my thoughts are there might be text recommendations.
right, we could dive into it
Mhm.
the next, right? It would be good to understand kind of the scope and depth
Yeah.
of what give us some time.
Yeah, and then hear what staff has to
Yes.
say as far as.
Right,
Okay, all right,
Madam Chair,
so,
can I make a recommendation?
yeah,
I'm sorry, and I know this is unusual, but because a number of people have come here
Yeah.
and we didn't post the meeting that it was gonna be done this way.
mhm.
Since we're not gonna be making a motion tonight, because I believe we need to do one final motion at the end of your
Right.
discussions,
Give everybody a chance to make comment. Yeah,
I might suggest that you do that. That way it can factor into the discussion next time and how
Okay,
you want to
perfect.
steer it. Is
that's
that?
very good. Yes. Can we take 5 minutes?
Yeah. I just, when people make the effort to be here, I want to make
Yes.
sure that we,
You're right. I appreciate it.
no, I,
Yeah, no, very good point. This is a wonky document to try and get.
This
Hey
is a
Jennifer, this is Forrest. I just wanted to just say I stayed on for a little longer than I absolutely could, but I've got to depart now, and I'll just catch up with you guys on the next meeting.
Thanks,
yeah, we're,
Chris.
like I said, we're not gonna take motion, we're not gonna make a motion, take action tonight. So I think that's,
So no
Thank you.
action.
It's okay.
is that.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night. I'll talk to you later.
Let's
I'm gonna
make a motion.
pause
and
it.
I make.
Oh, yeah, to take a break.
motion to take a-
That you do need a motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, reconvene. Okay, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jen, for mentioning that everybody should have an opportunity to comment since we're probably not gonna come to a recommendation this evening. So if you have public comment on the zoning code, anything you want to comment on at this point, come on up to the podium, name and address, and you've got 4 minutes to comment. Any public comment
Not anything.
about anything on the zoning code update? Go ahead, come on up.
Don't be shy.
Come on up. Can I provide a copy of my comments to all of them?
Yeah.
Okay. I just have one hard copy for you.
That's, if you wouldn't mind, give it to me because I'll have to
Scan that.
put it into
Yeah.
the minutes, yeah. thanks.
All right.
And I'll, Sure you don't get it.
Great. My name's Jeanette Blank. I'm with Montana Freshwater Partners, local nonprofit organization located here in Livingston. Our address is P.O. Box 338. We provided comments in, that are included in the September or this meeting's, packet. I just wanted to add a couple more points to just kind of wrap this up so that, we've got something to consider with code, updates. So just want to provide these comments to provide, encourage your board and the city commission to rely on the science, the data, and follow examples of other Montana cities to incorporate more effective waterway setbacks into the zoning code. Got a lot of comments on the map itself that I will not go into, but the reasons for this is we do know the risks. We've experienced the Yellowstone flood in 2022. There's other waterways, particularly Flushman Creek, that flood or create overflow within our cities because of undersized culverts, which create debris blockages and exacerbate that type of flooding. We've been given the data about the risks. I'm referring to the preliminary flood map modeling presentation that DNRC provided us, the city, in July, that shows the extents of the Yellowstone flooding for the 1% annual event, as well as Flushman Creek, which was very eye-opening to see what those impacts were across the city, not just along Flushman. Also noting that there are hundreds of properties at risk of flooding, which is our number one risk in our city and our county. For example, there are over 250 residents and business properties along Flushman Creek within the city limits, as was noted in one of our other comments that are in the packet. These properties are at direct risk of a 1% annual flood. Additionally, there are hundreds of other properties that are at risk from that sheet float that could occur with that 1% event, as well as hundreds of other properties that are included, including critical infrastructure, that are at risk from that 1% flood on the Yellowstone, especially if our levee doesn't get FEMA certified. The setback recommendations that we provided are science-backed. These are recommendations that were developed by Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, as well as Montana DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, both of which are based on extensive published data and scientific literature. And there are other Montana city codes that could be referenced or leaned into that have legally incorporated more effective waterway setbacks in their zoning code. For example, City of Butte has a 150-foot setback. City of Whitefish has between 50 and 100-foot setbacks. City of Bozeman between 35 and 100-foot setbacks in their code, their zoning code. And like Livingston, there is the variance option if that modification of a setback standard creates significant limits on responsible use of the property. Other strategies that cities have used is establishing a larger setback for newly platted parcels or parcels that will be platted in the future, and then slightly smaller setbacks for previously or existing platted parcels. And lastly, as Freshwater Partners, we've done a lot of work to help with the short-term and long-term flood recovery. And we're very aware, as I'm sure everybody here is also aware, is that the funding that the city relied on, federal funding for flood disaster recovery is limited now. It's getting cut back. So that cost is going to the state and the local governments. That's the intention there. And so we won't have the money there to back us up. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other public comment? Name and address, please.
Tara Eddy, 604 South 9th Street for 37 years. During the September 18th Consolidated Land Use Board meeting, I heard a gentleman Zoom in from Bozeman, works for Friends of Park County. And I heard him say that 10 feet is not enough of a riparian setback from Fleshman Creek. And at that minute, I thought, well, I've never heard of this organization, but I'm a friend of Park County and Livingston. And my families actually live beside what's commonly known as Fleshman Creek or Drainage Ditch for 37 years. So I decided I better contact other Livingston resident property owners that have worked really hard to buy their property. Maybe, same as me, they don't want land and its use taken away from them. There's now a proposal from Freshwater Partners that Fleshman and Billman Creek setbacks should be 200 feet. Where will it stop? I'm submitting a petition against riparian setbacks with 41 signatures. These are property owners. They all oppose the taking of private property for public purposes. As you look at these addresses, please note that it's a wide area of town, not just one neighborhood. Thank you all for your service and please consider our grave concerns. And then who do I give?
Thank you. I'll scan all that in and stick it in.
Thank you.
Do you want me to scan this and send you back a copy, Tara?
Pardon me?
When I scan this, do you want me to email you a copy?
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Bertha Lund, an attorney from Bozeman. Well, I actually live up by Martinsdale on a ranch, but I have a lot of practice in Bozeman. Been an attorney for 30 years. Before I went to law school, I covered Congress as a journalist and the United States Supreme Court. I've focused a lot of my career on property rights. And I know that we just heard testimony that there were setbacks in other cities. It just means that they weren't challenged. This is an area of law that I did write comments. I'm representing Tara and Dan Eddy. And we did this actually a few years back, the same thing that came up here. And I'm letting you know that a setback and the wider you go, the easier it is for an attorney like me to challenge it constitutionally. I do think you would be subject to a constitutional challenge, that it's a violation of the United States and the Montana Constitution. I'd be happy to talk to your city attorney. But that if you passed it, you are probably in the bullseye for litigation. So, and the United States Constitution says not, the Fifth Amendment, private property cannot be taken without just compensation. It doesn't say if you have a good cause or if you want to do it for this reason or that reason. It says you cannot take it without just compensation. And the Montana Constitution has a little bit more granular art where it says it cannot be taken or damaged without just compensation. So, you know, I don't want to threaten litigation. This is what I do for a living, but I love property rights. I would love to challenge something like these setbacks at the Montana United States Supreme Court. So I just want to make aware, and I'd be happy again to talk to any support. And the setbacks don't help for flooding. We already have all the flooding. We have different things that protect for different reasons. So I would advise you to strike your amendments to section 3058. And that would lessen the costs that would go with passing this. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but you probably would rather have me talk to your attorney. And I really thank you for the opportunity to present and that you did it this way. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? Any public comment online? Public comment is going once. Going twice. Okay, we're gonna close public comment. Thanks, everyone. Very much appreciate you sticking around. Sorry for the length of our meeting.
Closing public comment for this meeting, since we're not making a motion and we could
Correct.
open it back up.
Yeah. Okay, I have thoughts on several things, but maybe I should hold and see if anyone else has thoughts on text. Or if anyone wants to start on a certain section of text.
I just have something on short-term rentals.
Great, let's start with short-term rentals.
Yeah, I would say the way you're breaking this down, working through it, I think that's a good way to work through this.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that we
They read about.
sort of be great just to have.
So let's start with short-term rentals.
Just a thing.
The three things that I was thinking about with short-term rentals, riparian setbacks, and then the flooded areas and the question about an agricultural zone.
Mhm.
Those
Yep,
are my three.
yep.
Okay, so let's start with short-term rentals.
My question about the short-term rental is the building official that they are referencing in terms of inspections and then, questions about how that, I think that it needs to be done. I'm supportive of it. I'm just curious about who the person is that will be in charge of it. Who do they fall under? Is that Mr. Gager position? How is that being funded? I understand that he has people that he funds. Is it being funded through the permitting process? So it's an additional fee?
I don't know if that's germane to
The zoning text, but like,
tax, but
but
because that will be
is
developed
that-
by,
okay, but that's something that's been thought.
oh, yeah,
of,
oh, yeah.
Okay.
And there's models around.
Yeah, cause I know
It's good.
that the county secretary probably can't do all of it. But that my question was about who this person is and if is it
Yeah.
a position.
That'd be more
Is
code
it a-
enforcement.
That, well,
endorsed
so
by-
I've asked, City Manager Gager about this. The particulars of it would be determined depending on
If it gets approved.
what this goes through,
Okay.
but yeah, what gets approved. But I do know that he looked at it and the funding mechanism for its licensing, not permitting, just to
Sorry,
be
yeah,
clear.
yeah.
That's okay. I mean, just, but,
Yeah.
my understanding, that's very general, is the idea was to try to figure out a way that, like, I believe other communities have, is to make the licensing, the inspection pay for itself through licensing fees,
Got it.
without being like, and again, the point is not to, at least my point is not to make it so that people can't do this because we're charging $2,000 a year to license. That is not what at all. It's, and I think the state may even have limits on. what
Right,
you
and,
can
you know,
charge.
it's like any commercial business, you know, you need a fire inspection
Yeah,
annually and
exactly.
stuff like that, and that's the way it's gonna be handled.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so right now, yeah, our business license, you pay for it, that goes towards the inspection that needs to be done, whether it's by fire or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, that is a business.
And the
so.
management of the licensing is.
Is TBD. It has not been set up yet, but it would be through the city. Is that what you?
It's just like a software program or something.
I don't think that it's gone into that much detail, again, because to spend all the time on the details before it's actually
approved.
implemented, yeah.
Yeah.
That said, my guess is there would be some sort of a grace period before we would apply this and require the licensing, because we would have to set up the licensing for it.
Perfect, okay. Other than that, I liked it.
Okay. Anybody else on short-term rentals?
Well, I do want to talk about map.
Hold on a second. You gave me this.
Can I have a special exception? My only comment is, that I do think there needs to be a map associated with this. I think that should be a consideration, like where, and applying, you know, which types of rentals, right? So it's an overlay map. There's a lot of models out there that do this. I think this is a good first step, but I think it really needs, you know, that level of definition.
More than the table 30.40 where it determines.
Yeah,
type one
well,
is
and
allowed
I
in
guess I
certain-
would say,
Well, they're allowed in the. They're exactly, the type 1 and type 2 should be the same allowance.
Mhm.
They are.
Okay.
Yeah,
the way that we've proposed it.
yeah,
And that was
basically,
our
I think it should be more restrictive than that.
I do believe there's a way that if that's something that you want to discuss, I think that there is a way to integrate that into the text. If you want to do it as a recommendation into the maps, the zones that's allowed, that's one thing. But I think that, without knowing where those zones are, I still think that you can address it through the use table and the text by saying, we only want to allow it in these zones without knowing where those zones are gonna be. is my opinion.
Change.
Yeah,
If it's looking at the definition of how we're proposing these zones to be, and the concern is having a short-term rental use in that type of zone, regardless of where the map says it is, then I would say for this group, that might be what you want to focus on. Does that make sense?
I think so. Cause I am with you.
The table, just
Yeah.
talk, let's talk in terms of the table.
Table.
So, just to be clear, type 1, which one is the?
Let me pull
One is
this up and I
overall.
want to share
One
because
is-
I think that with a few people.
The state requires if an owner
Hang on. I need to-
occupies, well, what's the adjacency? Like if you own, so if
Okay,
you're,
I'm gonna look up real quick. I know it's in here and I
Yeah, be able to respond.
wish I could tell you, but I'm gonna look it up.
Review or. Right.
Oh, that's non-owner.
so there's
So-
the- yeah, I was just thinking the adjacency piece,
No,
so say you
it's-
own one. say
I'm gonna
you're-
tell you
say
exactly
one,
how we
say you
define
own the
them.
property and your short-term rental is on your property, you can also have an adjacent property which would be non-owner occupied, because you're on
So
this
it's actually-
property. If
it's
you
the-
own an adjacent property, you can have a short-term rental there as well. That's a difference between,
So it's basically like an ADU scenario,
or you just own the lot next door and
or the
have,
lot next
yeah.
door, right? So that's type 1.
that's type 1, which is owner occupied. With
Short-term
the
rental
ability to have an adjacent.
may be owner occupied, type 1, or non-owner occupied, type 2, and subject to licensing and performance standards. You go to 3057.
Yeah.
It's on page
Here.
63.
63.
Short-term rentals permitted in zones identified in section 3040, so this use table is saying that. And again, both, the way that we have proposed it, it's the same allowance on the use table for so type 1 and type 2. And so that is, we're proposing that it's allowed by right in R1, R2, LMU, HMU. Again, because HMU is focused on residential, but it has some mixed use. CBD, general commercial, which is currently highway commercial, those gateway areas. And then the areas that we do not allow residential uses unless like light industrial, it's 5 or more because the state requires we do. So light industrial, and public, which we are saying, no, we don't recommend that it's allowed at all. There's no conditional anywhere in there as we have proposed it. And part of that, I think, is because we gotta start somewhere. And if then you're saying, oh, in this zone, it's conditional, but in this zone, it's not, I think you're kind of losing the reason why either you wanna license it or you wanna regulate it or not.
Yeah.
Because then it's sort of like, and I will say, there are communities that say, well, we're gonna grandfather in everybody that's here. You talk about grandfather, I call it legally non-conforming. You're already doing this. Come in, I think it was Durango, when they were trying to get everybody to come in for short-term rental licensing. They basically said, you have a year, come in, and I think they waived part of the fees and said, license it, and then we'll move forward and say, hey, you all get the license, and then now we're gonna say no more than this many in this zone or in this area, but again, it has to be zone wide. So if you're saying, we can't say light mixed use on the north side of the tracks, we're gonna limit you to this many. It has to be all of light mixed use. So we can't, because otherwise then so there's ways to do that. Basically the permit required, if you look at this, defines it, again, the short-term operators obtain a short-term rental permit from the city, renewed annually. Operating without it is a violation of the code. Type 2 additional requirements. So type 2 STR, again, that's the one that is the non-owner occupied, I believe.
Yeah.
Did I just say that?
non-
Type 2 STR must designate a primary contact, doesn't have to be a family member, a lot of people use property management, who is available at all times during rental. If you're renting out, you probably want to have that anyway in case something goes wrong with the plumbing, right? I think people are already doing this. Designated contact must reside or have a place of business within a 50-mile radius of the rental property, okay? So somebody at one of the earlier meetings said, well, this is a problem, I want to pass on my short-term rental to my family, and now you're saying it doesn't have to be a family member. You hire a property management company if you don't have a family member that takes care of it, and you pay them, and they are the ones that can answer the call and manage it. Yeah, the reason we went originally, this was brought to us from our consultant with a time limit for you have to be 30 minutes away. I asked them to change that because, I mean, who knows how long it's gonna take to get over the pass depending on the day. So, it's within a certain radius. The reason for that is just to basically say these people aren't out there having a party that nobody can call and blah, blah, blah. Like you have somebody that's accountable pretty close to your community, if not within your community, that can address concerns that come up if there's not an owner on property. Again, contact has to be authorized by the owner to respond to complaints or emergencies and take corrective action. Yeah, that's the main difference.
So on the type 1, what about, there's something in there about the adjacent.
That's a state, yeah, that's a state regulation, isn't
And
it?
somebody brought that up. I didn't remember having it in here. And the state doesn't, where is that? Maybe that's what Catherine was talking about, to check it, because
It's owner.
I didn't
occupied
think that they
property.
regulated
Like
short-term rental.
owner- It's the property that the owners.
Yeah, so meaning like if you own your house and you're in
Mhm.
it and you have a short-term rental on your property, whether it's a ADU or your basement, whatever.
Mhm.
And then I thought so your adjacent property is not owner occupied because you live in this house. But if you have a short-term rental on this house,
Here's the thing, when you talk properties, if you have 3 lots and they're all together and I own all 3 lots, I can have as many different houses, it's still all my property. So,
okay,
and again, because we're not saying there's any difference in the licensing for type 2 versus type 1, it wouldn't matter.
and
It's
that's
just a
if we were
contact.
going to.
It's just a
determine
contact. Yeah.
Whether we want, so, and I think to your, maybe, because this is gonna be my point. You know, we're thinking about maybe being a little bit more restrictive on this. If I was going to have my way, I would want to be more restrictive on the type 2. The
Yes, that's where I'm
non-owner
going with this,
occupied.
yeah.
And so we have 2 public comments that gave a couple of recommendations that I thought were worth having a discussion about. Which would help restrict.
Mhm.
And one was, don't allow any non-owner occupied short-term rentals. You know, because if they're non-owner occupied, they all have to be long-term rentals, and that means that you're living outside of, you know, you're not living in it. Or there's one to allow type 2 short-term rentals as a conditional use in R1, R2, LMU, HMU districts, or only in R1 and R2. So it's, again, to your point, it's focusing on do we recommend being a bit more restrictive on type 2 rentals? And maybe that's an easier way to ease into this. The other thing I was curious about, and you know, maybe this is something staff could help with, is how many non-owner occupied short-term rentals are there in the city proper that would be affected by changing that?
We don't license, we don't regulate, we don't report, so we don't know.
I would.
I know how many there are in Park County.
Yeah.
I mean, I know how many total there are roughly because I got it from the sanitarian.
So I guess my recommendation for the commission would be, I would consider being more restrictive with non-owner occupied short-term rentals. And either figure out how many there are and how many people would be affected, or maybe consider making them conditional.
I don't understand.
I don't know how you could make condition, yeah, but I don't know what the.
Well,
condition-
So if we're we're narrowing it down to a type 2, and
Yeah.
as, I guess, what I would see is not allowed in R1 or R2.
And
That's where
only
I,
LMU and
just,
HMU.
yeah, just, yeah, leave it, LMU, HMU, and the rest of it.
So again, for the short-term rentals that are out there that are already operating, I envision that we would basically say, come in, get a license now. And then we would apply that. That would, again, this has to go through the city commission, but that's my recommendation because I think you need to consider when you have people that are making money, and it doesn't mean they don't live in your community. Just may mean they live somewhere else.
Yeah,
And they are making money by renting this as extra money. And then you say, well, can't do it because we're limiting it here. I mean,
but they
that's-
can still
that's-
rent it, it's just on a short-term rental.
So here's the other thing, one of those comments recommended seasonally. Short-term rental means that anything longer than 30 days at a time is a long-term
For the
rental.
long-term rental.
And we have a lot of people now who already do that seasonal recommendation. They rent it out long-term for 9 months of the year, and then they go to short-term for 3 months. There's a lot fewer people doing that. I live in a long-term rental, and my next door house, the little bungalow is owned by my landlord. And she's been renting it out for, I'll say it's $275 a night. Trust me, mine doesn't look anything like it. But she's been renting out for $275 a night, and it's full probably half the week. And she has said, and I've heard this from past landlords, because I've moved 4 times since I've been here, that a lot of people, they're seeing people transition from short-term to long-term because it's a hassle.
Mhm.
They're barely breaking even. So I guess I would just advise you, we will put in here whatever you want. I do have one text amendment related to short-term rentals and parking that I do want to bring up to you, but I would just say, consider, I
So-
think there's a lot of discussion about a problem
But
that
we don't have the data.
maybe, I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but I'm just saying there's a possibility that because it's been brought up so much in other places, is it the same problem here that maybe it is elsewhere? I don't know.
My argument is they come back on, and the idea is that they're gonna be a long-term rental, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna be a long-term rental. It means they're gonna be $3,000 to $5,000 a month as a long-term rental, which means they sit empty, or they're gonna sell it to someone who doesn't live here full-time.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying, it's not as easy as like, oh, this is gonna become part of the affordable housing stock. Like, that's not what's
So,
typically been happening in my professional. experience.
so I guess my concern is the integrity of community in our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely don't want to limit rentals, long-term rentals.
Right.
But when you have people cycling through a short-term rental, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Right? And when you get up, it's a popular spot, the closer you get in about anywhere in town,
Mhm.
right, to have those. And I think that's my topmost concern. And I see it as a business, right? Why are we allowing commercial, why are we allowing commercial interests in our neighborhoods?
Yeah.
Right? Now, type 1 makes a lot of sense to me,
Mhm.
right? Anywhere, as per this chart. But that's my concern. And so that would be, I don't know what the counterpoint, I'm hearing this, well, people have invested in this. They've invested at risk, in my opinion, in these things, right? Because there is no regulation. Well, now things are changing. There's a changing landscape. And why would we want, as a community, to offer up our neighborhoods as commercial enterprises?
I gotta ask this question, okay? If it's okay to have, auxiliary dwelling unit, on any property in any area, how can you decide that this short-term rental one isn't a use that you can use? They're all businesses, all those accessory dwelling units are businesses. They are a business.
But one would be owner owner.
No,
occupied.
accessory dwelling units and short-term rentals are
Yeah.
2 different
Yeah.
things. So I can build an accessory dwelling unit to basically have family over. It's just another type of residence. So ADUs are residential uses. Short-term rentals are commercial uses, the
Okay.
way we're defining.
But an ADU could be an STR.
An ADU could be a short-term rental, the
That's what
state
I'm
has
saying.
said we can't, yes, but it's not always like that.
So,
Yes,
so.
I understand,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's all kind of lumped in the same, so why make the distinction between the two and a one?
Well, if you,
Or short-term rental?
right, and it comes back to what type of integrity and the community fabric are you maintaining, right? When you have an owner occupied and they're renting out the back, that I feel is not, as disruptive as, unregulated, non-owner occupied in a popular location. You've got people cycling through there. I live in a location that we're experiencing that, and we see it around us. I just don't think it does, as a city and as a community, I think we need to, we should be protecting that, and we should be reinforcing that and building upon that. Not allowing commercial activity. So that's the rationale that I'm looking at.
And I have 4, Frank, next to me, short-term rentals, 2 duplexes and 2 ADUs, all summer, different people, right outside my bedroom window. Young, typically. Which if I was young would be fun, but I'm not, so.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
So it is, to John's point, it is disruptive, to community, I think, when it's not.
well, you don't
owner-occupied.
know who's moving through
Yeah.
there, right?
However, what I'm hearing Jennifer say is maybe this is a first, my thought was, can we figure out if we wanted to, say, change the table and change short-term rental type 2 to N across the top, or N for R1 and R2. What I'm hearing is it would be nice to know how many people we are affecting by that.
Yeah.
Is it actually a problem? Is it not a problem? And so what I'm hearing Jennifer saying maybe is this is the first step into understanding who owns what, is what you're hoping.
Here's what and this has been discussed on and off throughout the code update process. When the code update was presented to the city commission a few months ago, maybe it was more than a few months ago, there was some comment that maybe it needed to have its own kind of separate or more intensive discussion. That was not something that we had anticipated or included in the scope of work to our consultant for this code update. And so it is not something that we could undertake. One possible way to not kind of, because I suspect that if there's gonna be more of a discussion on this at the next meeting, there will be, and there should be, a lot more community comment on this. You may consider, if you want to make a recommendation, I could probably get in trouble for this, but whatever, to take the short-term rental out of this update for now and have a more focused community conversation about it, but not to delay this, because I really want to strongly urge, this has been over a year
Yeah,
we've been working
okay.
on this. And so I would just urge you that if this is something that needs to have that conversation, and it sounds like it
So
may.
would you,
I would
say
s-
that if we were to, make that recommendation, that would be the trigger to maybe consider pulling it out for now?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, I would say that
You would
should,
say that's a better choice than making.
that's not what I said. I'm saying that is one option if you believe, and if the public believes this needs to be a more focused, dedicated conversation than just rolling it into a comprehensive code update, then that might be one way you do it, is to not delay moving the whole process forward, but pulling it out and say, we recommend to the city commission that we do not add these updates for short-term rentals now, but that we have a more focused discussion to update at a later date. That's,
I don't know if I wanna take it out, cause I wanna move it forward. I wanna at least recognize short-term rentals type 1 and
If
type
you,
2.
yeah, I was gonna say, if you don't include them like in the use table, if you're just defining them, there's kind of
Yeah.
the definition needs to tie to something like why it's there. I mean, I could,
You know, you could make a motion and see how it applies, you know, to change it to R1 and R2.
Yeah.
And we could make that we can put that in we can just do that. And that can carry forward into our next conversation.
when I
Oh.
don't think we should make any motions, but
Okay.
we can write
But
all
you
this
could
down and
put it
make
in your
one
back
big thing at the
pocket.
end.
Yeah, okay. So we can, and now that we've said it and people are gonna hear it, we might hear more about it when we meet again. But it sounds like the planning board or the land use board is thinking about R1 and R2, short-term rental and table 30.40.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say that just, again, this is a text amendment that I must say, we had discussed this early on in the code update process and I forgot about it. We used to require, again, this was for ADUs. It's not, we cannot require off-street parking for ADUs. However, some of the concern about short-term rentals that we have heard from feedback is that if we're considering it a commercial use, which it is, the way that we're proposing it, is parking concerns. So one of the things that I wanted to bring forward for your discussion and consideration that I intended to include in here originally is that we do require one off-street parking spot for short-term rentals, regardless of type. Unless the site constrains it and it's not possible. And I've talked to other staff about this. I've talked to our city manager. I would like to make that an administrative decision because otherwise we're just,
Yeah.
but, you know, and I don't mean like, hey, I have this really nice like rose bed that I put in 40 years ago and I don't want to move it. That's not what we're talking about. And it is a bit of a subjective on my part, but, or whoever is in this role that determines. But it's basically, can you do it or can't you? Like, if it's just like, hey, and here's the thing, if you're already parking your own car there, there's probably some parking. And tell me you're parking your car on the street and you're leaving this for your short-term rental. So we can at least have some way to say short-term rentals are not impacting our right of way and clogging up our parking. So that is one recommendation that I had intended to include in here was a required off-street parking for short-term rentals. Unless the site constraints just do not allow for it.
Okay.
Yep, something along those lines, and we can tweak that language if you want, but if that's just something for you to think of.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are we comfortable with kind of postponing that? Well, but good for discussion. Now it's out there and we'll bring it up in the next meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on short-term rentals? Okay, let's move on to setbacks in riparian areas. Jennifer, did you have any staff comments that you were thinking about on that one?
I'd like to tell you that I don't wanna comment on that at all.
The current recommendation in the zoning code update is a 10-foot setback in riparian areas, right?
Yes, we had an attorney that spoke to you. I included the letter from the attorney. We have some more petitions on this for no riparian setbacks. I will say that that letter was already submitted to our city attorney and there can be more discussions, but they did not have a problem with me moving forward as we've proposed it to have a riparian setback.
Okay.
Um,
Can you clarify if there was a riparian setback in the previous?
Nope.
So there was no
Not.
setback in the last one?
There
This
is
is a
no
new-
current setback. This is a new setback. And I've got up here the recommendation that follows what some other places have done. It would be a 300-foot setback from the Yellowstone River,
Mhm.
which we don't have a ton of parcels, like number-wise touching the Yellowstone River. There's some large parcels that are undeveloped. It's not gonna be a problem for them because actually, if we're talking about like the Watson property, there's already a development agreement saying where those single-family homes can go, and they're way up on the bluff. So the area that they are being proposed had nothing to do with water storage during the flood because they're up here and the river's down here. 300 feet for the Yellowstone River, Fleshman and Billman Creek, 150, and all other waterways, which
I'm assuming we're not talking about ditches. Do we have other waterways?
The ditch. would be
100
no-
feet. Well,
Billman,
but I don't think you
Fleshman.
can do that for a ditch.
Livingston ditch, but
Yeah. I mean, ditches. The riparian area adjacent to ditches, I would argue, are not your natural riparian areas anyway. They're
Yeah.
heavily nutrient loaded depending on the season, so I'll leave that to y'all.
Okay.
The city's recommendation right now from the staff level is, that we do not, move forward with that large of a riparian setback. I think the biggest concern is Fleshman and Billman Creek. I heard about maybe looking at saying, you know, if it's existing developed parcels versus new development, that's something that I would need to run by the city attorney, because again, then you're differentiating between parcels in the same zoning district. So I don't know how that would work. I'm all for protecting riparian areas. I was very surprised that these other cities have that, because our standard lot size is 25 feet wide by 140 feet deep. And if your 25-foot wide lot happens to have Fleshman Creek crossing through the middle of it,
That stinks. That's a whole thing.
yeah. Now, if you already have, again, and I'm glad, Chair Schwartz brought this up, that, if you already have something there, stays there. This is
Yeah.
really to protect for new development, new disturbance that's encroaching into a riparian area. So it would not affect any development that's already there. I'm gonna let y'all make that call,
We
because I just.
Yeah. Clarify development. So does development mean a fence or a shed or, I don't know, or if they're fenced,
Hardscaping.
yeah, yardscaping, like,
So again, I think that there's a couple things, and this is not my area of expertise, but I have worked in TMDLs and all this long ago in another life. Like for water quality. So if you're trying to protect water quality, there's a 320 permit that is 310, thanks, close. That looks at mitigation measures like erosion control, putting in sediment migration barriers so that you are protecting the water quality. If you're putting in a hardscape and you're allowing that and you're saying it's all development, that really is what's gonna protect your riparian area, because you're putting in a hardscape for the 310 purposes, I can put in erosion control logs and then I can grow my grass seed back and it's all good. But if that encroaches into a riparian area, you've disrupted
the natural.
that
yeah.
natural riparian area and cycles. And so I don't know. I don't know if there's a recommendation, like I said, from our standpoint right now, we are not recommending supporting that large. We have not done the analysis on how many parcels. I know Freshwater Partners has done some maps. And again, there are, in some places, to me, it makes sense when you have a large parcel that you're looking at, there's a development agreement at some point, but again, riparian areas are already pretty far back because of topography, so I don't have one way or the other, I'm gonna let y'all make that call.
Would we, so I guess my question on this one would be, you know, we've got public comment that says 10 is too small. 150 to 200 is the recommendation on Fleshman and Billman, 300 on the Yellowstone.
You have a number of people that are saying anything is too big too. to
Correct.
that.
So my question is, how many people would be affected if we found a happy medium in there for new development? I think I'd be happy with that, right? For any new development.
Yeah.
I think having, 300 feet from the Yellowstone might be, well, depending, like
This
again,
would mean you couldn't build a garage, you couldn't build an ADU.
depending on the side of the lot, right? Like how many open lots are, and this is
Near the Yellowstone,
undevelopment.
on the
Yeah.
north side of the Yellowstone, you're talking about very few lots that are not small platted
Right.
lots, except maybe out east. For the most part,
Okay,
you have, most of our stuff doesn't even touch it. It's Fleshman Creek and Billman
Yeah.
Creek, I think, where this is gonna have the biggest
both
impact
sides.
on your
So I
average
guess I would,
property.
yeah, I would be curious how many homes would be affected versus how many vacant lots are there? And would those homes be grandfathered?
And it's not just vacant lots. And that's another thing for you to consider. If I wanna put up a shed, if I wanna put up a tough shed, it does not require a building permit. But if the purpose is to protect the riparian area, should the building permit be the deciding factor? That means I can't put up a tough shed, that means I can't put up a fence,
Well, within 10 feet or plus. of the
depending on what
river.
you want
Yeah.
to make it.
Yeah.
So again, to me, I see the biggest impacts for this potentially, even a 10 foot to some extent. Being
Almost
along
20.
Billman and Fleshman, because that's where most of our properties hit.
Got it.
So just, I'm happy to have a map, for the next time that shows, I was trying to find, I know that, Freshwater Partners provided a map of, all the areas. You provided a lot of great maps. Thank you. I'm trying to find it, but it's because of the number of comments, it may make sense to have that kind of as a discussion. And I would say, if you're gonna continue these meetings and having discussions in small slices, I would recommend that we try to make sure that we can notice what each meeting is gonna be about, so that people can be involved.
Okay.
So that's just something I forgot to mention earlier when you said you wanted to do this, but yeah, I can bring these maps and I can blow them up if the discussion's gonna be, but great maps, fantastic maps. This is, and again, something I do want to say. We had a map change request come through about 4 or 5 months ago for a property that flooded, but was not necessarily in the regulatory floodplain at this time. The decision was made to hold off and not move that forward until we had more information. It's kind of tricky when you start making regulatory decisions on a new zoning, and again, this is a map thing to some extent, when we don't have maps that have changed our regulatory floodplain. Because all you want, you can say the water went here,
But if you don't. have a
and frankly, I think there's a good chance it is again, but if we're not regulating to that, and the whole purpose of the regulatory is then there are measures in place for floodplain permits and for, I would, to mitigate the potential damage, to elevate that kind of thing. Now, those measures are meant to safeguard that building. They're meant to safeguard structures, not necessarily everything else around them. There's a lot kind of going on within this. Sorry, but I just do want to say that we have data and we have information that's saying this is what we think is gonna happen. And again, the river migration is different than the floodplains, right? Than the floodplain mapping. There is also a good chance that floodplain mapping may not ever be completed because right now there's no funding. So there are a lot of people that provided comments on this. And so I would say if there's things that you, especially because this is a text thing, but I think that it's informed by the map because it's tied to where the creeks are, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to try to cover this now?
No, I think all I wanted, we're discussing
Okay.
these topics, but we're pushing it. We know we're having another meeting.
Yeah.
So I think I guess, does anybody else have any thoughts on the public comment in this? What's in here? Okay. So at this point, we're not,
So I just want to be clear, there's no setback now.
There is 0 riparian
And
setbacks.
Is
in our zoning code.
there 10-foot recommended?
yes.
We have
Okay.
recommended as a starting point, a 10-foot riparian setback regardless of the waterway,
Is that-
not a
is
ditch.
that-
but-
A high water mark?
I think, is it ordinary high water mark?
It just says a buffer of at least 10 feet from the ordinary high water mark of a perennial stream
Okay,
shall be observed within which no construction is allowed.
Yep.
That's the only thing that's in here.
and so we don't have definition on construction.
No construction is allowed would mean any development. I would say patios and again, maybe we need to fine tune that, because if you're gonna hardscape something, I wouldn't necessarily consider that destruction, but it would certainly impact
Yeah,
a red herring
I
area.
think some definition there would be good.
And it could just be no development. I mean, it's. I have not weighed kind of the pros and cons and how that would affect,
Yeah.
you know, I'm hesitant to tell people, you know, that we want to restrict their ability to put up fencing. But then again, like if you're talking about, if something is actually mapped into a regulatory floodplain, you cannot put up privacy fencing. It has to be like flow through fencing, like a chain link or something, so.
Okay.
At least that's my experience in Colorado.
So that's on page 64, that, yeah, no problem. And the two public comments that we received on this were stating the science behind 150 feet plus 50 and, or 300 from the yellow zone. So that's just, that's where I'm getting at with the
Yep.
discussion.
Yep.
Okay,
They were consistent in that increase,
Yeah.
those two comments, and then the letter and then the signatures were just none at all.
yep.
Yeah.
So those are the two kind of contending or competing comments. Okay, we're gonna push that off. So let's keep going. We have one more and then we're out of here. The last one we had and is well, so we're not supposed to be talking about the map, but I think from a comment, and it deals with the map, but we're talking about text. So we say the map, but I'm gonna talk about the text. So there were, there were several comments which were, focused on the future land use map from the growth policy had a number of open and natural areas within the city. And there were concerns from a number of different organizations, and this was at least three, where if you look at the map, Jen, if you don't mind pulling up our,
Land use map.
yeah, not the land use map, but just our zoning map.
Current,
Yes, or either one, actually, the one we're proposing,
Okay.
please. So the areas that were circled, if you guys remember, was this big one,
yeah, oh, I could bring up that map. I
this
have it.
one, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry,
Trying to
I'm sorry.
Speed up the process a little bit.
No,
So-
she, like I said,
The concerns in those areas are the density of the proposed zones and the impact of potential flooding. And so there was a comment that suggested that why don't we have some different type of zone that helps preserve open space or low density, which would be like an agricultural zone. So that was in your comments and.
I think this is the
Yeah.
map, because this came from Freshwater Partners.
Yeah,
but I
this
think
is
it's
one,
aligned
but
with-
there's three maps that have all the same places circled in the public comments. One came from Elvid and Freshwater Partners and Friends of Park County, maybe, yeah, so those three at least. I don't think the Environmental Council put one in. So I guess what I think we could consider recommending to the commission is adding another zone that is really thinking about a very low density or open ag, I guess, is what I don't know if there are other, and I didn't have time to look up other.
Is this centered around the flooding?
Yes,
Okay.
and I don't know if you guys
General
recall,
open Space?
yep, this piece, I had a lot of concerns about this particular one. Because this is up on the bench. And I was saying, hey, I don't wanna see HMU, I'd rather see something like LMU, because at least it's 36 feet, not 50 feet up on the bench.
There's already development agreements on that.
Well, there is, but if you read the comments, it sounds like those agreements,
The development agreements, from what we can tell, do not touch height.
yeah, or it was from.
Sorry, what was that?
I have not been able yet to find anything where it specifies height. They're tied to high density residential development or single family. The single family home sites have been GPSed. You have a map made of them. They're all above that area, so they're up on. Not in the flats, but they're not up on the bench. They wanted to keep it down so
Mhm.
that you couldn't see them. But I have not been able to find like a height restriction.
Here was the comment. which I think is valid. The handshake, more than a handshake. it
It's
was
not a
bit-
handshake
yeah,
agreement, it is
But it
a,
was in 2019.
no, it was earlier than that, but it's still valid and it will continue to be valid.
However, it said that the city was responsible for running the utilities up to that area
We have through the hospital.
to the hospital, but not up on the bench.
No, it would go down Swingley.
Yeah, but you'd still have to, so you'd have to run it. That's a lot.
And it's a payback agreement, so the city doesn't end up paying for it.
If the property sells,
Well, I mean, yes.
I guess, okay. So the comment was, there's this agreement. And in the agreement, apparently, they were supposed to do those utilities within 5 years. The agreement was made 19 years ago. Which is more than 5 years. And they haven't done anything. So the comment basically says, if you zone it as high HMU. And the landowners say, you know what? Holy cow, I can sell this thing and develop HMU, right? Which is very different than the agreement, right? Because it's like condos and then one.
The agreement's pretty specific about no more than 60 acres out of the 400 can be developed. There's 37 home sites, they can only go there, and if you go the condo route, the condos have to be located in a certain area towards the south, not in the floodplain or the lower areas by any means. But it also allows an extra 10 single family of the residences on top of that. It's a strange thing, but it is what it is. But yes, our attorney looked at it and said it is still valid. The consideration of running the utilities, because I think there was talk of originally, it's my understanding, when this was annexed and the whole agreement was done with the hospital, was somebody was saying, hey, let's just run a bridge across the Yellowstone right there and run utilities. So that's not really on the table, but because the extension of utilities to the hospital happened, that is the extension that happens there. And as far as, because I read the same thing you read, and I was like, this kind of says that we have to do it. But at the very end, in a different place, it says there will be a payback agreement set up. So if the city fronts it, a developer has to pay it back. You are not gonna have those 37 home sites if somebody develops there, and it is a responsibility to provide access. So to pave a road that meets our standards through all of that, to get there. We're not talking about affordable houses for the single family resident.
So if the agreement becomes no, because the landowner says, you know what, I don't wanna deal with it anymore, I'm selling it, I'm out of it. Then we've got a area which is HMU, or now it's PUD. This particular one down here, I guess. Anyway, I think that comment struck me as interesting, right? And so,
Is that the case? That doesn't it follow the land or the owner?
It follows the land.
Yeah,
So
so you can't
always-
remove that.
You can't, yeah, I mean, that my understanding is, again, we can have the city attorney
Yeah.
write something on this, but it sticks with the land. Because the intent was that the owner now would sell it at some point, somebody else would develop it, and they basically stipulated how it could be developed.
oh, so it's like deed restricted.
Yeah, it's a development agreement that was done by ordinance.
What
It
if the
was-
current family doesn't care about the deed restriction anymore? Does
Doesn't
that
matter, it was signed into,
Okay.
that was part of the whole discussion, is my understanding, for the annexations of the.
They can't develop because they wouldn't get building permits issued.
Yeah, they can't, the development has to follow this, regardless of who owns it and who does the
It's
development.
sort of like a PUD, right?
Which is why we had suggested zoning at PUD, and then there were some people that got, I think the confusion was because it didn't go through the PUD process,
Yeah.
because we didn't have it, and so regardless of what we call it, you can designate it like an underlying zoning with a DA on it. The reason we were thinking it would be good is we're finding out about development agreements, and it's like, how would you know? How would I know if somebody wasn't here that was part of this whole thing? There was this
And
little
that's how
tiny
you
building
decide.
that had its own zoning district over on that side of town. I was like, what? Like, how do you know? And yes, I mean, if every time somebody came in and asked me if they could do some of their property, if I wanted to run over to the city clerk and look through the records, sorry, I don't have time. So the whole point was to kind of designate there's something different about this. For me, from my standpoint, zoning it something else because it is tied to that development agreement is fine.
It won't
And if you want to kind of be more consistent with what the future land use plan is, I would not recommend creating a new zoning district. We got pretty good feedback from from the city commission that they wanted us to not expand our zoning districts, but to try to make it simpler. But I mean, this is a city. We don't have, things may be assessed by the state for agricultural uses if they're not using it, but I mean, when you start zoning stuff like that, to me, that can really change the value of your property regardless of if there's a zoning agreement, and that's a concern.
So are we okay with that piece, just leaving it as, just leaving it as whatever the recommended zoning is? Because it's really already locked in, that's already defined and it's gonna stick
It's
with the.
defined. What I will say is, again, I'll look and see,
The height
I couldn't find a height.
So it's assigning a height through a zoning designation.
I
Well,
don't
we
think it changes
originally-
the amount of development, but it would impact, from what I can tell, the height that's allowed.
So HMU is the proposed.
Well, didn't we change it to LMU? Cause I had said in the last meeting.
No, you recommended, and that
Oh,
was not what we,
Okay,
to
I
change
recommend
that to
we at least
LMU
change
because
it
it
to
was
LMU
kind of
because it's 36
in the middle.
Instead of 50.
this one was LMU, was the change that we made according to that. This, from what was in the packet, was a PUD.
Okay.
Because I was like, I talked to Grant, I talked to SCJ, it was like, hey, this has a development agreement, so this indicates it. You could come up with your own thing. You could say it's whatever, HMU DA, or we just come up with a zone that would be, it's a development agreement and number it. I'm not sure. I would like something to be on there to make it clear that there is an underlying document that basically regulates how you can develop it.
Fills in the gaps for what's not in the agreement.
Yeah.
basically.
The thing I would really, really hate, and again, this could be just because I haven't done my job or somebody in the future, again, you have one person in your planning department, 20 years from now, nobody's around that was ever part of this, and a developer comes in and says, this is the zone. And there's nothing to indicate that there's something that ties it down. That was our thought behind the PUD or whatever you wanna call it.
And that was my concern, is if it changes hands and it's an HMU, that sounds like a nightmare up in that particular parcel. To me. That was my
Can you,
point.
Jennifer, would you mind scrolling so we can see that comment there?
Yeah.
Let me just pay attention.
And so there are a lot of comments about all of those parcels being.
The bluff is not, you're never, I mean, it's basically because it's so, if that's what you're calling the bluff, Jeanette, the really steep part.
Mhm.
If you look at, and I have it there, I can pull it up, I put it past all the other slides, but when you look at a floodway and a regulatory floodplain, and they have the same line, that's an indication it's really steep. So the areas where these buildings could go are not down in that area where it's impacted by the water. They're way up here. And again, because it's floodway all the way up to that bluff, they couldn't build their own.
So any other ag related or any other things that you wanna sort of?
The only other ones that were in the comments was the R1 and the HMU on the other side of the Highway 10. And then also,
For the large parcel, if you zoned it R1, here's the thing. It would still actually, for the density, even if that development agreement weren't there, because it's all under the same ownership, they could still do what it says in the development agreement and they could put in the condos.
Mhm.
So it's not, from that standpoint, it's not restricting any future owners less than what that development agreement allows. Does that make sense?
Yeah. so those are just, the areas that are circled are the areas where the comments were consistent with concern for growth in those spots because of flooding
Right.
and, I guess also just the sensitivity of that river corridor. So the suggestion from, well, three comments were concerned about those spots. One suggested a different zone that was more in line with, let's call it open space,
Yeah, create an agriculture zone since we don't have an open space zone.
since we don't have one. And so that was what I thought we should bring up for discussion. And I don't know if anybody, you know, I think that in
Well-
addition to that, there were some calculations, and I think this came up in an earlier public comment about how much land, excluding this part of town, how much available land there is currently for development. And it was something like, if you exclude this side of town, you have about 5,000 potential dwelling units. I believe that did not include commercial or general commercial. It was R1, R2, LMU, HDU, HMU. So my thought was, and I think the thought of the comments were, you know, if we would, you know, do we prefer to keep this more open, at least these parcels, and try and focus the growth downtown or in the more, you know, and not expand out further into the east. I don't know if I can talk anymore.
Something to keep in mind. The parcel that is encumbered by a development agreement, not such a big deal. The other parcels, you start limiting somebody's development potential for their property that they have development rights to right now.
Yeah.
That they paid a lot of money for.
And I get it.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's-
it's
but
again,
there's-
it's balancing.
There's a precedent when they purchased them, right?
The
They
pres-
had zoning that they were counting.
No, actually, when all of this stuff was purchased, it wasn't even in the city.
That's right, yes.
So,
Oh, yeah.
so there was not that, and again, with the Watson parcel, that large parcel, and it's not all of the Watson, it's just that large parcel right there. That has that very specific development agreement about where the single family houses can go.
Yeah.
All the other stuff, trying to keep it from visually impacting the city, that's what I take from that, and also, I mean. Somebody that cares about the land, it's a 400 plus, or it's about a 400 acre piece of property, and they're saying regardless of what you do, you can't develop more than 60 acres of it. I mean, that's pretty impressive for the property to put on, but the other, like on the north side,
Mhm.
the glass paper property, that is not encumbered by a development agreement. So
Yeah.
there's two different situations if you're, I'm not gonna call it downzoning, but changing the zoning and changing what they have the ability to develop, even if they never planned on developing it, so.
Yeah. No,
Just keep that in mind.
Can they, so if they wanted to develop it and we had a lower density zone, can they request a PUD and do something differently?
The
Or,
one thing I want to say about that is right now, the way that the commission said that they wanted to handle the PUD and where they were allowed were, for the most part, where residences are allowed, with the exception of R1. My guess is, and again, this hasn't been contemplated because we didn't bring forward an agricultural district. But if an agricultural zoning district was something that you wanted to recommend, and I will say, it can't just be for, like, we'd have to go through and tweak a lot of stuff, use tables, all that's fine, we can do that. But it may be that you can recommend that PUDs are allowed in agricultural districts. It could be that the commission says no, because we're not really trying to send residential development there.
but we're zoned to do, like, we are recommending zones that do.
You would have to basically say, we're also gonna make a recommendation to the PUD part of the ordinance if you were gonna do this and you wanted to leave it open for
Mhm.
agriculturally zoned properties, if that was adopted, to be able to bring forward PUDs. Then we would need to change the PUD part of the ordinance to say that PUDs are allowed in the
In this
agriculture.
agriculture,
Yes.
Okay, food for thought on those. That's that's just what I wanted to make sure we all were aware of. This is what comments are coming in, these are the parcels, this is why. And we can stop there.
Yeah, agreed.
Sorry. Okay. We're done. with everything that we thought we were gonna talk about
Yes,
today?
so you need, so a motion needs to be made to continue the meeting to a date
Yep.
certain,
Perfect.
which I now need to look and find out.
I
when
think
we
that
have a
meeting should go hopefully relatively quickly, since we've had a lot of discussion on the big.
I'm gonna, can you have your laptop when we can't see, but, can you see this? Can everybody see what's seen in this room? Has to go on loose loaded meetings, I'm gonna have to go in all my files to try to figure out.
I cannot see it.
Okay. So we're gonna look at the meeting calendar. Thank you.
Thanks for hanging in there, everybody.
Where are you? Where are you?
I have a cat, let's see, oh, you have to look at your calendar.
Here it is. Grant has said, if at all possible, he would like to keep the meetings in this room, just because.
There.
So we have. Next week, here is actually. Again, so that we can actually see.
Pop up and we'll go.
Okay, so next month, or sorry, next week, we've got federal holiday on the 13th. I would probably not recommend having a meeting on the 13th. 14th, we have at 5:30, it's booked. We do have the room from 3 PM till about till about 5, I would say, so we need to get out. So if you wanted to do 2 hours, I believe that just putting out an agenda for that meeting is the noticing, because this is a continuation of a public hearing, so let's go with that. So as long as I can put out an agenda tomorrow, I think we'll be okay, or even Friday.
So was that the intent,
That
is
was-
that would just be 1 week, or do we wanna go 2 weeks?
We run into the 15-day thing. No, not for yours. So if you wanted to, yeah, for this, we have noticed this is a public hearing because you're continuing it. I don't need to notice it in the paper again. I do need to be able to get an agenda out saying this is what's on there, but that's only like a day or two. So the 14th so next Tuesday, this room is already held for a meeting we are canceling. So we would have it from 3 until I would say 5. For Tuesday, if that's what you wanted to do, and I would just put out an agenda for that. On Wednesday, I believe it is taken all through, it's taken all through the day. On Thursday, also taken at night. Does anybody really want to meet on a Friday? I'll be here. If you say you want to meet on a Friday, that's the 17th. Actually, I can't. I'm sorry, I cannot, because I actually have, no, I don't.
Do we have options in the following?
Following week on the 20th, it looks like, when is this?
There's gonna be a debate there.
Is there?
To debate, yeah.
On the 20th, there is.
Too bad that they didn't reserve it, but okay, we'll go with that.
I'm assuming it's here. I just have it on my calendar.
I don't
Oh my
know.
gosh, somebody should let them know.
Well, and I mean, I think if we're having a debate, then to have a public meeting when you have people that might be interested, it's kind of.
Well,
The debate starts at 6:30.
Yeah,
6 or
you would be at the
6:30.
debate. You would be at the
You'd be
debate.
at debate. I'd
And there's
be
one
there.
on the 22nd, but the 21st is Tuesday, the 21st.
Tuesday, the 21st is city commission meeting.
Oh, shoot.
23rd,
23rd.
good. You could do something on the 23rd. You could do something after.
How do we feel? about
4.
the 23rd?
Oh, actually, I won't be out until next week, but that's okay. Somebody else can take my place.
23rd isn't good for me.
Is the 14th, how's everybody feeling about 3 to 5 on the
I think
14th?
that's probably right.
Frank, can you do that?
My kids.
Okay, why don't we
Let
try
me
that, we'll
just
just get it
double
over
check.
with.
Didn't you see last night? They brought in their kiddos. It was great.
Who did?
The
The commission?
no, the water,
The BFR guys.
Yeah.
What a rec.
they had like
Recognition.
pictures of it. It was awesome.
Phew.
Um,
Okay, how
so
about?
the
3
14th,
3
is
to
that
5?
where, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
It's already reserved. I'll change it. It's reserved for tomorrow. We'll go ahead and post it.
Is that gonna
Are
be a
you-
problem because people work? I mean, is that, you know what I mean?
I mean, we have an HPC meeting scheduled from 3:30 to 5,
Okay.
and so it's up to you guys. I
Let's
mean,
just do it.
it's,
If everybody's in agreement, I make a motion that we, continue this meeting.
and if you're not making a motion, by the way, if you're not gonna make a motion at that meeting, which I don't think you would, then even if everybody's not there, we need a quorum to have the meeting, but we don't have to make a motion.
We'll be making a motion at that one, because then we're done, right?
I think that's kind of the direction we're heading. That's my understanding.
Oh, I thought you were saying like, we're gonna meet weekly and,
Well,
okay.
we made a lot
We
of
thought
progress.
about- We made a lot, had no idea how much, I mean,
There was a lot of comments.
I was kind of under the assumption that this, like, there was gonna be a lot, but there was not as much as I intended, and so we can wrap it
If
up.
we are gonna do this on 14, I would like to know exactly,
It's the same agenda. The agenda's the same, take the housing thing off, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the
take
continuation.
take the
Catherine's thing
CBD
off.
thing.
No,
Take Catherine's thing off
it's,
the agenda.
Oh, yeah, no, but I'm saying,
it's the same,
okay,
isn't it?
Yeah, there's, I mean.
if there's
everything
certain
that's
areas
been-
you wanna focus on, I would say it would be good to include that so that people know either they wanna show up and comment or not, so.
I think we'll do a quick run through it.
Because we're not gonna be able to accept public comments in writing, it's gonna have to be, they can submit it that day and we can read it, but we don't have enough time to like have a packet out and, or say we're gonna take comments. So-
I think it's the same, because we,
Yeah.
tonight was just, I guess what I was doing was chunking it up for discussion.
Yeah,
Because it was a lot and there was a lot of comment.
yeah.
And so for us to, I was just trying to be slightly systematic about how we
Yeah.
approached it. So,
That makes sense.
we are just continuing the meeting. The plan is to make a
8:30,
motion.
Yeah, to the 14th at 3 PM,
Starting at 3.
starting at 3
Fine.
PM.
And we have. to be out
If
of
you,
here by
let me,
5
wait, let me make sure, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, we have it at 3, so let me make sure that there's not something in here before it that I need to set up.
Okay.
I just,
Sorry if that was wonky tonight, but I
No, I
was
think
trying to
that
like
was-
attempt
Or did we
to
make a
make it
motion?
somewhat
I think-
structured.
it might have to be 3:15 to 5,
3:15
because
is
I
fine.
need time to set up and I don't.
Right.
Yeah, so,
They just saw that.
I'll help you, I think.
I can help.
you can, yeah, y'all can make,
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I won't be here till probably earliest would be 3:30, 4 o'clock.
You know what, we're gonna take public comment and there'll be public comment and
perfect.
then we'll.
and you
So
can
I'm
also
gonna-
call in
yeah,
by Zoom.
I've got a meeting that I can't ask.
So,
So I make a motion that we extend this meeting to Tuesday, October 14th at 3 P.M. Or do you want to do
3:15?
3:15.
3:30.
Just do 3:30.
okay,
That way he's not gonna miss it.
I make a motion that we extend this meeting to October 14th at 3:30 P.M.
Yes.
continue, yep.
to be continued.
Fantastic.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Second by
motion.
Bailey. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Was that 4 of you?
Yes, everybody, that was unanimous, with the exception of course.
All right, give me 1 second. Is there anything else you want to say before I turn off this recording?
I just want to say thank you, everybody, for sticking it out with us. This was a wonky process.
Yep.
But we're,
Exciting. So
I think we're through the bulk of it for the land use board anyway. Okay, and then let's meeting adjourn at 9:10.